Good morning, everyone, and welcome in. Welcome to our Rule Review webinar. This is put on by the Operator Certification Program this morning from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Glad you're here. I'm going to give us another 2-3 minutes here just to let others continue to trickle in, and then we will hit the ground running with the webinar. Glad you're here this morning. Good morning once again, everyone, and to those who are just joining here, welcome to the ADEQ OPSCERT Rule Review webinar. Glad to have you here this morning. We're going to go ahead and get things going. I've got a couple introductions here, just getting us reacquainted with the OPSCERT program as a whole, and then we'll launch into some great presentations this morning. More people still coming in here now, but we will go ahead and get running. My name is Bram Briskhorn. I am your OPSCERT program coordinator here with the ADEQ Capacity Development Unit. If you need anything OPSCERT, feel free to reach out to me. That's our OPSCERT email there, azopsert@azdeq.gov, as well as our phone number. I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible. You operators, I try to keep you in the loop as much as I can. We are here on GoToWebinar. This is our platform for webinars here. This webinar is being recorded, so if you want to revisit any of these presentations at a later date, it will be up on our ADEQ YouTube channel, and that will always be an option for you. For you attendees, webcams are disabled. Microphones are muted, but you can still engage with us. So we do want your interaction, your questions, your comments, concerns, whatever you have throughout the webinar. I have this little image of a bar here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that little black question mark box, that box with a question mark in it, that is the questions tab. That is where you can leave your questions, leave your comments. All attendees are welcome to drop any amount of entries into there, and then us presenters and panelists can see those questions, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can in that questions tab. And right next to that tab is the other important one, that little piece of paper with a paper clip on it. That image, if you click that tab and go to webinar, that is our materials section. And so there are copies of our presentations there that you can download this morning. But for you operators looking for PDHs this morning, the one that says agenda, that is the one that you're going to want to make sure you download. In fact, I recommend downloading it now so you don't forget later. This is to prove that you were here this morning, your ability to download this agenda file. That's what you'll submit to your operator certification portal account to get those PDHs. There are 4 PDHs available if you're here for the entire duration of the webinar this morning. If you don't happen to grab that webinar and you need it later, we do verify attendance down the road. So if you shoot me an email, say, hey, I lost that agenda, I can verify that you were here and how long you were here for and get you a copy of that agenda. So that's in the materials tab. Presentations also available for download in that materials tab. And again, My phone number and email there if you have any ops or questions. Now, if you are viewing in a group this morning, if there's multiple of you in one room watching, that's great. We do encourage that. But I do recommend, in fact, I request that you all register. Follow that registration link for this webinar itself. That way your name will populate in registered attendees. And if you want, if you need to verify your attendance later, even if you're not the person logged in viewing the webinar right now, we'll be able to do that. So make sure you're registered even if you're viewing as a group. Looking on to our topics that we'll be covering this morning. First, you got me. I'm going to be going over some operator certification program updates, and then I'll be talking about what we're calling the TMF 2.0 survey, and we'll get into that here shortly. Then we have our senior inspector, Laprelle. She'll be bringing us a presentation on what to expect while being inspected for those sanitary surveys. And then we'll have an introduction to public notices at 9:30 from two of our CACs, Bella and Gavin. I see Bella's hopped on here. Good morning, Bella. And then we'll have a break. We'll get into an overview of NOCs and NOVs from Natalie. And finally, this morning, we'll have a presentation from our groundwater unit on permits, on individual aquifer protection permits and understanding those. We'll keep on going here. A few quick poll questions before we begin. Let me get these pulled up here for you. I do have a couple of poll questions, and they should pop up on your screen here momentarily. So first, which is applicable to you? Which is most applicable to you? If you're here as an operator, if you're a system owner or manager, board member, engineer, or other. I'm curious what some of those others might be. If you want to drop those in the questions box, if you've answered other, that would be useful for me. But I'll leave this poll up for just another 20 seconds here. Looks like we got a compliance officer, laboratory supervisor, program manager, consultant. Awesome. This is great. Yeah, we like to have a wide variety here. Hopefully there are useful presentations in here for all of you this morning. If you do have those operator certifications, once again, we do offer PDHs for this webinar. But if not, I do trust and hope that the webinar will be beneficial for you as well. Awesome. A chemist, environmental unit from Yavapai County. Fantastic. All right, we got a great spread here this morning. I will end this poll. We can see the results here on the screen. And I will pull up another poll here. This is our second and final poll. For those of you working directly with water systems, if it's a wastewater system, a water system, you can answer multiple questions on this poll, I believe. So if you work for both, go ahead and click both. Awesome. Give it just another 10 seconds here. I see most have voted already. Perfect. Another good spread here. I'll get my camera on here as well. Awesome. Hi, everyone. So going ahead from there, for you operators, just a couple requests before we get into presentations this morning, some general housekeeping for operators. While I have you here, I like to remind you, make sure that your facilities are up to date. This is now only needed if you work for a public water system that's under the state of Arizona's jurisdiction. I've had some contacts, people saying, hey, my system's not in here. It's probably because it's a private system or it's under a tribal jurisdiction or otherwise. But if you do currently work for a water system, you work for a public water system under the state of Arizona's jurisdiction, make sure that's on your account. Your boss cannot update this. Your employers cannot update this unless you give them access to your portal account, I suppose. But really, if a system is flagging on our end as not having an operator, it might be because you haven't added yourself as an operator. So make sure you get into your portal account. Public water systems, that's what the tab looks like. Go to the facilities tab, click Add Facility, and then you can search the facility by the name of the facility, by the public water system number, and select yourself as either an operator, or every system will need that operator in direct responsible charge as well, if that is the role that is applicable to you. And just as important, if you are no longer with the facility, remove yourself, please. So the day that you leave a facility, log into your portal account and delete yourself as an operator, so that we can see if a facility is missing an operator and needs a new one on our end. Sorry, I had that poll open still. We'll keep on going. Our Operator Certification Committee is still looking for a couple seats to be filled. This committee exists to support the Operator Certification Program. We have quite a few technical experts in different disciplines and the like that help us guide the program as a whole. It helps us guide training, outreach to systems, regulatory compliance efforts. We'll just meet only twice a year. It's really low stakes. Meet twice a year and we'll discuss the future of the operator certification program, provides some technical advice, recommendations to ADEQ, shapes our training and outreach efforts, and then the term is a minimum of 3 years. Now, most of our positions are filled at this point, but if you meet or know someone who meets the currently open position roles, we would love to get in touch with you. We're still currently looking for a grade 4 certified water treatment plant operator. So that would be a W4 and or C4 operator who's currently employed with a wastewater, water. We have the wastewater side, drinking water treatment plant operator. We're looking for a representative of a small public water system. Qualifications, there's not a hard number for what qualifies as small, but serving under 3,000 or so ideally, and a faculty member, someone teaching sanitary sciences at a university or community college. So if you do know someone who meets those qualifications, or if you yourself want to apply, please do reach out to the OpCert program. All right, on to the TMF 2.0 survey. Now, this is an upcoming survey. If you are associated with the water system at all, you're probably going to hear about this in the coming years. This survey will be issued to all public drinking water systems specifically. And so wastewater systems, this probably isn't as relevant to you, but this is something for you drinking water systems to be in the loop on. So I want to give an overview of what this survey is, why it exists. Some of you may have already heard me talk about this before. But this is just rolling out now. And so this is a survey that will be issued to every single public drinking water system in the state over the coming couple of years. So an introduction to the survey itself, what is TMF? TMF stands for Technical, Managerial, and Financial. We're looking at the capacity of these three subjects across all the public drinking water systems in Arizona. Essentially, we're looking for a general summary, just in a nutshell, how long can a system run? How urgently does a system need assistance? If we can gauge your technical, managerial, and financial capacity, we can get a basic understanding of how suited your system is to run indefinitely into the future. So defining these terms a little closer, technical capacity, that is the adequacy of your system's physical infrastructure, the water sources, that's operational knowledge. So example questions from the technical capacity section of the survey. One of them is, are you able to hire and retain sufficiently qualified staff to operate your water system? Or another is, can your water system be operated completely manually if necessary, where manual refers to operating a system without automatic controls or SCADA system. That's technical capacity. Managerial capacity looks at the ability of a water system to manage system operations effectively. So that's things like ownership, accountability, staffing, corporate structures. A really simple question from that category, for example, is does your water system have a legal structure? Is it an LLC, nonprofit? Is it a DWID? Another question from that section, is there a clear understanding of who makes operational managerial decisions for your water system? Do you have a board, a council, system owner, whatever it is? And finally, financial capacity. Those questions refer to the stewardship of funds to sustain operations long-term. So things like revenue sufficiency, creditworthiness, fiscal controls. A basic question from that section would be, does your system have a rate structure? So maybe this sounds complicated? I hope it doesn't. It's really, really short. It's really a brief survey. It's nothing. It's not a huge ask on the water systems part. Now, some of you might be remembering we issued a TMF survey back in 2022, and you can be asking, why are we doing it again? Well, the 1.0 TMF survey was 130 yes or no questions. It was a beefy survey, and we mostly cold called systems and said, hey, do you have an hour to answer 130 questions with me? And it did give us some really good data. We've been able to use that data, but a single point of data in isolation is only so useful. And so we want a survey that we can issue regularly, every 3 years or so on our inspection schedules. Issue the same survey periodically is the goal. And so we wanted to make it more bite-sized. We shrank the survey down. And so this new survey is only up to 27 multiple choice questions. And I say up to 27 because if you answer certain things, other questions won't show up at all. So 17 to 27 questions is surveys that we've issued so far. It's taken less than 20 minutes. So really it's quick. But the capacity development unit here at ADEQ is going to use these results to help us tailor training. Events like this we'll be catering our outreach surrounding areas where there's a common lack for water systems, or regions in the state where there's a common lack for water systems. We'll be using these results to provide technical assistance. We have what we call our master priority list. That's how the technical assistance team decides what systems to approach next to offer our assistance to, and the TMF survey results will be factored into that. And we're also hoping to gauge that capacity development over time. Like I said, this survey we can hopefully issue every couple of years, and we can see is our system's trending up, our system's trending down, is your system trending up or trending down, with just this bite-sized score. And so the final score is out of 100, and that's going to be used as a basic prediction for how urgently your system needs assistance. And this survey is specifically looking at things that we don't see otherwise. It's looking at things that we don't detect during our sanitary survey, as Laprel will get into some of those details here in just a few minutes. But it's going to look into those areas that ADEQ is not typically looking into, so we know what's going on for your sake. But how is the next question? How is this survey going to be issued? Like I said, every public drinking water system in the state will be contacted over the coming years. It's going to start with smaller community systems. Our goal is to focus on community systems first and start with those with really small populations. Those are the systems that we are at ADEQ most equipped to help. We've already completed over 40 of these surveys, like I said, about 20 minutes a piece. But we'll reach out to you from a manner of different ways, depending if we're already in contact with your system. We'll offer it. I'm offering right now. We'll see. There's a chance for you to sign up for the survey if you're looking forward to it. But eventually, we'll shoot you an email or a phone call if we haven't heard from you and try to get it scheduled. The survey is built into a system called Qualtrics. It's just a survey system, and ideally we're going to be able to schedule a 15 to 30-minute video call with you, and the ADEQ staff member will be going through the questions on the survey, and you'll be having a conversation, a discussion there. So who should join the call? If you're an operator, if you're a system owner, we ideally, if we need to, can have multiple people join the call. If you know all the answers, awesome. We'd love to have you there just one-on-one with an ADEQ staff member. We've found that operators tend to have the best technical answers, while admins and owners, know the management structure. They know the finances better. And if you want, we can send the questions in advance. So while we're scheduling a survey with you, you can say, hey, can I review those questions? And we can send them your way. And then you can, go to whoever on your team you need to get the best answers, the most applicable answers. And so beyond the score, really the goal of this survey is also to start conversations, let you know who's here at ADEQ, who can assist you. We'll give you some direct feedback during the survey, some best practices, some guidance. We'll be able to assist and answer your questions. So it's a conversation. It's a point of data for us that we can hopefully use, but hopefully it's useful for your system as well, just in that conversation. So what does your score mean? You get your score, you get 75 out of 100, you get 40 out of 100. What does this mean? And should you be alarmed? First and foremost, this is not a tool for enforcement. So you don't need to fudge the numbers. You don't need to lie to us because you're afraid you're going to get your system shut down if you score really low. That's not the point of it. It's to help us help you. This is from the capacity development team. This is the technical assistance team. We're the guys who come out and try to get your system some money. So this is not a tool for enforcement. It's really to help us gauge how urgently your system needs assistance, if at all. A higher score you're probably good to go, and that's a good thing. And it's going to be useful for us as we try to digest statewide trends and concerns, like I mentioned, targeting training, targeting outreach, things like that. And then during the call, direct guidance will be offered. So if you want to, if this is interesting to you, if you want to get ahead here, we are hoping to schedule some surveys as soon as possible. Like I said, we've gotten through 40. We have hundreds and hundreds more to go. And before we start knocking on your door, it's a lot easier if you want to come to us and just get this thing out of your way. So if you work for a drinking water system, if you think you're the person to answer this survey, or if you think your boss might be the person to answer this survey and you want to send this information along to them, go ahead and get ahead. We will, like I said, be reaching out regardless in the coming months. But if you want to reach out to us first, while we're really at the ground level of this survey, there's still time for things to change. We've with our first surveys been editing some questions, refining some things, and getting a lot of great feedback. So if you want to help us kind of shape how the future of this survey is going to go, it would be awesome if you wanted to reach out to us, schedule it, give us some early feedback. How it's going to work: send us a preferred date. Send us a 30-minute time slot. Generally, we're available for surveys Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there's a dozen or so staff members who are involved with issuing these surveys. And so if you just want to shoot the capacity development email with your time, say you want to do tomorrow, 3 to 3:30, or you want to do a month from now on a random Tuesday from 11:30 to noon. We'll find a staff member who's available on that time that you suggest, and we'll make it happen. So that's the email there, the capacity development email, capdev@azdeq.gov to schedule. And like I said, it's hopefully useful for you, and it's hopefully painless for you, but it is something that's going to be coming to all those drinking water systems. That's the TMF 2.0 survey, introduction to it. Are there any questions? I don't see any in the questions box so far, but I'll give just a couple seconds here in case there are any questions or in case anyone wants to get the survey scheduled. No worries, it doesn't look like it, and that's good. Hopefully it's nice and straightforward. I don't think it's too complicated a thing. I do request spread the word on it a little bit. The more systems are ready for it, I don't want to be cold calling systems again, ideally. And so as we go on here, just a couple reminders for us for the duration of this webinar. That questions box is there at any time during any of our presenters' presentations. Click that box, type your questions. I myself will try to get to it if I can in the moment, and if it's something that's directly for the presenter, we'll wait till the end of their presentations, and then I'll pass those questions along to the presenters. As another reminder, that materials tab, make sure you go to that piece of paper with a paper clip, click it, download your agenda, particularly for you operators. Get that agenda uploaded into your OPSERT portal account for the 4 PDHs that are available this morning. And if you're not here for PDHs, I applaud you even more for coming to learn. And those presentations are also there in the materials tab if you want to download any of those and review them later. And again, this presentation itself is being recorded. This whole webinar is being recorded and will be up on our ADEQ YouTube channel at a later date. So with that, that's all I got for OPSERT and the TMF 2.0 survey. But Laprel, if you are ready, we can get on into what to expect while being inspected.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start presenting.
Perfect. I'm going to send presentation. Make you the presenter here, and I will get off the mic and camera and leave it to you.
Okay, are you seeing the main presentation page?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Laprel Tazzoni. I'm one of the drinking water inspectors here at ADEQ. And I'll be doing the presentation for what to expect when you're inspected. Let's see. Just a little bit of background for me. I started with ADEQ back in April of 2020, so I'm coming up on my 6th year with ADEQ. Previously, before working with ADEQ, I was working with the Navajo Nation EPA. with their drinking water program up there. I worked with the Bureau of Land Management in Farmington, New Mexico. And then before that, I was working in the Washington State with the ALWA Natural Resource Department. So I've had a little bit of a diverse background, but drinking water is where I found a little bit more. I enjoy drinking water and where I've been so far, and every time I get an opportunity to do these presentations, I'm more than happy to do so. So I might have met some of you guys out in the field during inspection. So it's been a good time, and it's been great meeting everyone throughout Arizona with this job. All right, so in general, who do we inspect? And we, as an Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, the drinking water section, we inspect public water systems that have 15 service connections or all the water systems that regularly serve potable drinking water. There's more definitions for what a public water system is. It could be serving a population of 25 or more people for at least 6 months out of the year. There's some differences in what types of water systems there are, like community water systems, non-transient, non-community water systems, and the third type being transient, non-community water systems. So each of these have their own criterias. Community water systems are more of your larger municipalities, your towns, some of the domestic water improvement areas. Non-transient, non-community areas are places like schools, office buildings, business plazas. The transient, non-community water systems are water systems that serve like gas stations, rest areas, restaurants, truck stops. So the cadence in which we do drinking water inspections varies. Generally, we conduct drinking water inspections for community water systems more frequently than the non-community water systems. Typically, it's about 3 years for community water systems, nothing more. We wouldn't do drinking water system inspections for community water systems every 5 years. We want to be out there at the very least 3 years, and then vice versa, at least every 5 years for the non-community water systems. However, there is a rule in R184-208 where it states that each public water system shall undergo sanitary surveys in accordance with the schedule established by the department, and when the department determines that a sanitary survey is necessary to assure compliance with this chapter. And I included that in this presentation because I believe in the past 2 years, the last year for sure, we've definitely conducted inspections sooner than 3 years, maybe a few months, like 6 to 8 months sooner than the actual 3-year cutoff. And that's just because we want to make sure that if a system had issues or compliance history items that we see kind of concerning, we want to go out there a little bit more sooner than just waiting for the 3-year mark to go out there, or waiting for the 5-year mark to go out there. So that's something to keep an eye out for whenever we reach out to water systems going forward, or after this presentation. If it seems odd that we're reaching out sooner than 3 years or 5 years, that's what we're looking for going forward. Typically, drinking water system layout consists of your source, or public water systems have sources. They could vary between wells, springs, rivers, creeks, or lakes. What type of treatment components are within the water system. What if there are treatment components, are they removing contaminants? Are they disinfecting with chlorinators? Are you trying to soften your water? We have the finished storage tank components, pumps and pump facilities and controls like your SCADA. If you have any SCADA systems on your water system, the entry point to the distribution system, is that in the correct location? Where you're taking your inorganic samples, your SOCs, VOCs, and then the distribution system, who it serves, like your community service connections, the business service connections, campgrounds, rest areas. If it serves a water standpipe, we take a look at the overall layout of your water system. Here's a really general look at a water system. Of course, if you have a more complicated water system, this gets a lot more detailed than that, but typically in a straightforward water system, this is kind of what we're looking at. And the EPDS sampling point, like entry point to the distribution system, you could have one location, you could have as many as 5 or 10 if you're a larger water system. But they should be all in a location where it's after all water components and then before it goes out into the distribution to the first service connection. If there happens to be an EPDS where the system is taking it after a treatment plant and then before a storage tank, we'll work with the system to find a new location where it makes better sense for the EPDS to be located at. So in general, as an inspector, we would want the water system to be in compliance by the time the inspection is scheduled. Water system owners and operators are responsible for protecting the health of their customers and maintaining their system and trying to be in compliance is what we want for all the water systems in Arizona. ADQ inspectors will provide the system with all the information needed to be in compliance by the time the inspection occurs. And then I'll break down how the process is when we start to reach out to you to schedule drinking water surveys. So again, just to break down the definition of a sanitary survey, it's based on a physical inspection of the water system, which includes how the system is operated and maintained. The sanitary survey is assuring that drinking water is safe by identifying sanitary defects and problems which may affect the safety of the water. And ADQ has 3 types of inspections. There's the ADQ file review, which is conducted for all sanitary surveys. File reviews can also stem from complaint responses or level 2 assessments, which requires a site visit. The other 2 types of inspections are unannounced sanitary surveys. All my time here at ADQ, we've always had announced sanitary surveys. This would be a rare occasion if a sanitary survey was to be unannounced. And then, of course, there's a 3rd type, which is the announced sanitary survey. During the announced drinking water inspection, I mentioned before that we'll start to reach out to water systems when they're approaching their drinking water sanitary survey routine inspection. So we would reach out, whether it be a phone call or an email, to the main contacts or the administrative contacts of the water system. We'll agree upon a date and time for the sanitary survey. And this can vary. We can reach out as soon as 2 weeks before we try to schedule this sanitary survey, or as soon as 6 weeks before, depending how complicated the system is or how large or vast a system can be as well. We'll typically follow that phone call up with a confirmation email. Again, in that email, there's going to be more details, date and time we'll be meeting, the location where we'll be meeting, the reminder, a little bit of tips and reminders in there that, for example, like ADQ inspectors don't climb storage tanks, and water systems are required to provide evidence, photographic evidence, or someone on site at that time during the inspection to provide the evidence that there's a storage tank hatch gasket, that there's a screened air vent on top of the storage tank. And that's for safety reasons, the most biggest explanation for why that is. We don't know what utility service or business public water systems safety protocols are for climbing tanks. So we leave that up to the water system to provide those items. We request that all applicable sampling plans be readily available. Of course, there's a microbiological site sampling plan, lead and copper sampling plan, the stage 2 disinfectant byproduct plan, the emergency operations plan. And for a water system, you wouldn't have all of these if you're non-transient, non-community. You would at the minimum have a MSSP. We wouldn't request an emergency operations plan from a transient public water system. So whichever plans are applicable to your water system is what we would want to see, and make sure that it's current and reviewed every year annually. Any changes that have come up, we want to have the most current copy of all these sampling plans. Also, the county compliance assistant coordinators are on this email, and if a system is missing any monitoring and reporting items, they'll typically let the water system know, hey, you guys are missing a public notice, or there's missed monitoring that we haven't seen uploaded to the CMDP portal. And typically there's little mishaps there that can get caught just within that email, and the water system will say, hey, we did that sample, here's a copy, or here we re-uploaded it into CMDP. And that definitely helps in terms of reaching compliance for the drinking water inspection. Also, we'll give a little breakdown for the results of the last sanitary survey if there were deficiencies noted, because we don't want systems to be repeating deficiencies year routine inspection after routine inspection. And then last, we'll include an attachment, which is the ADQ's pre-inspection checklist. And we have modified checklists for each types of water systems, like a community water system, non-transient, non-community, and then transient system water, inspection checklists. Here's a little example of a pre-inspection checklist, and this is for a community water system. And it's a good practice for if you guys have any like interns or newer employees for your water system, or new owners, new operators just starting out. It's really a line by line item of what exactly we'll be asking for during the inspection. If you go by this checklist and you go, whether if you have documents readily available, or do a walk around of your facility and check if like the well slabs are intact, there's no cracks. If there are cracks, you guys have the opportunity to go up and seal them, or if there's a sediment covering your well slab, you'll have that time to like prepare the slab for when ADQ inspectors come on site to take a look at things. The other good thing about these checklists are these links here. If you're looking at it through your, since it's going to be on your email and you click on these links here, they take you directly to these documents. If you don't have any documents, or if you need to upload anything, these links are working, and then you can just go from there to any of those forms and templates. Natalie a presenter for later today. She'll be going over NOC's notice of opportunity corrects and notice of violations. And so she'll be going through this list here in a more detailed capacity. But in general, these are our top violations that we run into while doing sanitary surveys. So we just don't want systems to repeat these same violations. And we try to give photo examples of how what we're not looking for. But I guess it would be a good idea to include photos of what we are looking for. So that might be a good idea for an update on this template in the future. Steps to take for a compliant inspection. So while we schedule that sanitary survey, we also want someone available who's knowledgeable about your water system. It would be great if owners were available to be on site. If you want your operator to handle the site visit, that's fine. But we want them to also be knowledgeable, and they should be knowledgeable about all components of the water system. Few and far between, we have systems that designate someone to be available during the inspection, which is fine. But once we start asking questions and we start getting more I don't know answers, that's what we're trying to avoid during these sanitary surveys, because we're trying to get a good aspect or get a good idea of how the water system is running, whether it be on a day-to-day basis, a month-to-month basis. Water operators, owners, admin contacts, if any of those folks can be available during inspection, that's what we want as ADQ inspectors. Also, we do provide this link to the external, I think I accidentally clicked it, but okay. And this should be where it takes you. You can look at your water systems profile, and it has your water systems facilities, if you need anything updated or changed. And this doesn't have to just be during the inspection. It could be any time of the year. You can use this link in this website to see what your profile, your water systems profile looks like to the public facing community. If you need to have, if you want to check in on like open violations or missing monitoring and reporting items, this link also helps with finding those out as well. Also, going back to the inspections again, it gives you an opportunity to review and have readily available documents, correspondences sent to and from ADQ. And then last would be, again, just to review the ADQ pre-inspection checklist. So the day of the inspection, we will be out there and we will provide the notice of inspections rights document. Right now we're using Survey 123, so we've gone away from paperwork inspections to using our tablets for Survey 123. We'll go over the rights that the water system has for letting us be out there on site for the inspection. We'll let you know if we have any tape recorders, which we don't, but if we did, we'll let you know that we're recording a conversation. If anything, we'll be taking photos of deficiencies or just general layouts of a setup for a treatment component or your storage tanks, your wells, just to get a snapshot of their current conditions. Yeah, we're not, if a system doesn't want to sign this document and they don't want to continue with the sanitary survey, this is what this document is for. Is like, I'm not allowing this person to be on our property to do the sanitary survey. So that is a whole nother aspect of how we wouldn't continue with the sanitary survey at that time. And then I don't think I attached on the last page but there's also a small business Bill of Rights document, typically at the end of this document here of the inspections rights form. Yeah, we provide that. Whoever is going to be, whether it be the operator, the system owner, or the admin contact, will want either one of their signatures for this. Once we get the notice of inspections rights out of the way, we'll start looking at paperwork. A lot of systems do electronically send us these documents in the emails prior to when we get out there. And that does save both parties time. And it allows us to start looking at the physical components of the water system sooner. And then the inspection goes from like a 3-hour sanitary survey to maybe an 1.5-hour sanitary survey, or it definitely cuts down time. So feel free to send emails to inspectors when we reach out to you, your current sampling plans and your emergency operations plans. Records of analytical data, if the system is missing any monitoring or reporting items. Again, we kind of mentioned that with what the CAC reaches out with if anything's missing. We want to have make sure that all water components within your water system have their applicable permits or exemption documentations. If you have any treatment going on, we want to make sure that you guys are maintaining your maintenance logs, and then backflow records. We want to make sure that you guys are, for systems who have backflows on, if they have backflow assembly devices, how are you guys maintaining your records? How are you guys keeping track of past due annual testing requirements, so on and so forth. And then last, we'll do the physical components or the walkthrough of the facility. And then a little bit to go into the required regulatory documentation. We have the monthly microbiological sampling site plan, which is a requirement for all public water systems to have. We have the lead and copper sampling plan, which is a requirement for community water systems and non-transient, non-community water systems. The stage 2 disinfectant byproduct plans, as well as the maximum residual disinfectant level plans, would be required for community water systems that chlorinate, and non-transient, non-community systems that primarily that uses a primary or residual disinfectant other than UV light, or receives water that have been treated with a primary or residual disinfectant other than UV. So this would be water systems buying water from another water system that chlorinates. Kind of getting a little bit into the details with that one, but that's just an example for some of the regulatory documentations we have that we'll ask for. And then last is the emergency operations plan, which are only required for community water systems. Going into the microbiological site sampling plan, there are 2 types of templates we have that water systems can use. One for population that's less than 1,000 population, and then one that's for more than 1,000 in population. The second is your lead and copper sampling plan. Here's an example of how our ADQ templates look. It's fillable and you can update it as many times or as often as you would take samples for. It does ask here for the results of monitoring. So if you guys are sampling every 3 years, this document would need to be updated every 3 years. Or if you're sampling every 5 years, it would be need to be updated every 5 years. The stage 2 disinfectant byproduct plan. Again, this is for systems that chlorinate. We also have a downloadable template here. This one you would typically work or be in contact more with the compliance assistant coordinator If you have any additional questions for this one, they review and they approve these sampling plans specifically. So now we're going into how our field inspection reports look. So here's page one. What we'll want to do is make any updates on any contact information that the system may have. We want to if a population needs to be updated, well, we can update that. If service connection numbers need to be updated, we can take this opportunity to update that during this inspection. Every water system has a system grade, so we'll review the grade at the end of the inspection, and if any grade changes occur, we'll follow the procedures to go through that process following an inspection. This will be where you will get a summary of how your inspection went. Did you meet certified operator requirements? Did your physical facilities, were there no deficiencies? Did you guys meet all the monitoring and reporting requirements? And if any of these compliance summaries are no, then what was the result of those deficiencies? So some of them could be minor potential deficiencies or significant potential deficiencies. And then this goes into what Natalie will discuss later today. You might be getting a notice of opportunity to correct or a notice of violation. So there's 9 elements of a sanitary survey, and this is what we review during our routine sanitary surveys. So we go through the sources, security, treatment, distribution systems and lines, finished water storage tanks, pumps, pumping facilities and controls, monitoring, reporting, and data verification, water system management and operations, and last, the water operator compliance with state certifications. Sources, we'll go through and see if there's a ADWR profile for any wells that you are using. Are there permits, ATC, AOC permits for those wells? Is your system a GUDI system, which is a groundwater under the influence of a surface water? Wells, we want to ensure that there's a sampling tap at the for a raw water sampling pool at a wellhead. Is there again, I talked about it earlier, the EPDS sampling point, is that in the correct location? Is it after all water components and before the first service connections? Is there an vent that is installed at the wellhead, and is it turned down no more than 2 feet above the well slab? Is there a number 16 mesh screen on there? Is there an operational air release valve for if you have the vertical turbines or submersible pumps that pump greater than 100 GPM? So this is typically for wells. Sources could be anything from springs, creeks, rivers, lakes, if it's a surface water system, if it's not a well. So to continue on, is the well protected? Is there fences around your source? Is it locked? If it is a surface water system, is the intake protected and locked? There's no exposed unprotected water lines. Above ground water lines are typically not approved via Engineer Bulletin 10. Here's an example of a well head that doesn't have any fencing around it. There's no identification for what type of well it is, no 55 number on there. Again, going into a couple more example photos. The well slab, this one looked like they sealed it. There would have been a crack here. This one definitely would need a brand new slab, because you wouldn't be able to seal this with a sealant to have a well slab that meets Engineer Bulletin 10 pretty much. And then also these wellheads here look like they're in a floodplain, and a lot of sedimentation moves around, and it would need to be rectified, where like you backfill this slab or reconstruct a new well slab where this wouldn't be exposed during flooding events or anything like that. In these examples, there's no well slabs in all of these photos. Again, that comes from Engineer Bulletin 10, so there's certain requirements that all wellheads need to meet. And these would have all been identified as potential deficiencies during the inspection. For springs, these are photos that one of the inspectors took out in the field. There's makeshift filtration intakes where the system used a PVC pipe, and there's some vents in there that are separating the sediment from where the water intake is. We would want a more protected intake than this. There's spring box requirements also in Engineer Bulletin 10 that systems can refer to. Some more example photos of unprotected or unsecured well sites. This vent here, it's cut, and anyone can access any of the components in that area. This is a good example of how some systems protect their wells. They build a well house with a key and a lock, and it's protected from not just people, it's weather protected, makes your well last longer and less capabilities for it to get rusted out sooner than later. And then more photos of fencing protection around water components. Sorry, these photos came out blurry down here, but they're just fences around finished storage tanks or treatment facilities. And that's what we would want to see for systems protecting their water components. Going into disinfection, if your system has a chlorinator on site, we'll be looking to make sure that it's in a secure area, that it's the NSF approved, the product that you're using is NSF approved. There should be a label on there. I think the next slide has an example of that. But yeah, here's liquid chlorinator, usually sodium hypochlorite, a breakdown of typically how those chlorinators are set up. And then to the right here is an example of UV chlorination. We'll take note of those items. Yeah, so we do come across systems that use pool chlorinating liquid for disinfecting their water system or their water supply. And that's not what we want to see when we're out there during the inspection. Going back to the NSF approved chlorine, these labels here, what we are looking for, they should be stamped or notified that they're NSF approved. If your system uses gas chlorination, we have an addendum for that in our report. And it goes over what we're looking for if we come across like a 2-ton chlorinator, if the weight scales are working, how the system replaces their gas chlorination. Disinfectant recommendations. If any of these were not met, it wouldn't be seen as a notice of opportunity to correct. These would just be recommendations. Like we would hope that all water systems have these readily available for their employees when they're dealing with gas chlorination. Is a bottle of ammonia water available for chlorine leak detection? Are the chlorine cylinders and chlorinators in separate rooms? How are you guys maintaining the records of the weight of these gas chlorinator cylinders? If your water system is a surface water or a GUDI, we do have an addendum for that as well. We'll do a walkthrough of your surface water facility from the intake. Are there bar screens there? What type of chemical feeds do you have? What type of flocculation, if any, are present? Is there disinfection? Are there filters? Is coagulation? How's the coagulation process? Are there any chemical additives that are being used aside from chlorinators like liquid chlorine, polymer, ferric chloride, the pre-sedimentation? Are there screens, bar screens or wire mesh screens? Are the intake pumps functioning properly? We'll take a look at if any water source water measurements are being recorded, and whatever is available for us to see at that time of the inspection, we'll make notes of what the pH is, turbidity, whatever readings usually the system has at that time. We'll record those during the inspection. If there's a coagulation process, what is the process like? Is the machines working? Are the mixers in use? Treatment in general, we've got systems that do have to install treatment to meet safe drinking water requirements. Some of the more common types of treatment, a lot of water systems in Arizona end up having to install our treatment for arsenic or nitrates. And if they do, what types of treatments are installed? If it's a surface water system, are they doing 4-log compliance monitoring? Are there operations and maintenance manual available to review for any types of treatment components that are on the system? This is an example of a POU or POE. If a system is using either of these treatment devices, have those treatment devices been approved by ADEQ? Approved as in, do they have their approval to construction, approval of construction documentation? Again, is there an O&M plan ready to review? Is it updated frequently? And then, like, how many POUs are installed on the system? Why was there 20 in the last inspection and then 20 more installed? Were there permits for the additional 20, or was there notification to ADEQ that 20 more POUs were installed, and why? So we get a current update on these types of components that we get completed during sanitary surveys. Next, going into the finished water storage tanks. We want to make sure that they're secure, their foundations are in place, they've got their required overflow pipes, they've got the air vents that are screened, there's no drainage buildup around the tank, that the roof is watertight, there's no leakage going on, that any drain valves are air gapped, inspection of the hatches and the locked hatches and gaskets are in place. And then, do the gauges work? What types of gauges are they? And how does the system keep track of where their water target is for these water storage tanks? And this is how it would look in the report section. Yes, no, not applicable. More photos of what tank foundations we would want to see around storage tanks. This is a good example. No vegetation, the tank ring is exposed. It's not covered by additional sediment. The lip of the storage tank isn't covered with soil or rocks. It's not getting rusted out. Again, the same type of good example on the right side. It's within a secured fencing. These are seems like to be a smaller version of these. Like, I would say these are probably 20,000 gallons or 30,000 gallon tanks, and then we come across poly tanks every now and then. So here's a good example of how a system created their foundation for their poly tanks with their rings exposed. To the right here is not what we would want to come across for storage tanks and water systems. There's some vegetation growing around this area. There's an RV park that's parked a little too close to the storage tank. And I would bet that there's no fencing around this storage tank as well. Another aspect we come across are trees, branches protruding towards the storage tank. That's something we don't want to see as well. So we'll ask the water system to trim the trees towards the storage tank, so that way your storage tank is protected and the integrity of the tank isn't in jeopardy. We're going to be looking for overflows and screened overflows. If your overflow has a flap, is there a gasket in place? Is there a proper distance or air gap from the ground? Or if it's going to drainage, is there proper air gap or space separation from when the water leaves the overflow? Here's a good example of someone providing a measuring tape of a good air gap from their overflow, and you can tell here that it's screened. So these are some good examples of storage tank overflows that we're looking for. Again, mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking for gaskets on the hatches. It looks like this tank up here does not have NSF gaskets on the lid. This tank, this system did provide a gasket here, which is great. They provided these photos during the inspection, so we were able to identify that these were in place at the time of the inspection. There's a lock here for this storage tank hatch. And then this system looked like they installed a tire, a rubber tire or tube or something on their storage tank hatch, and that's not what we want to see as a gasket for your storage tanks. These are good examples of number 16 mesh screens for your storage tank air vents or your overflows or the well vents. If you guys got pressure tanks, we're going to be taking a look at if there's operational pressure gauges, if there's a pressure release valve. And then I know some water systems have these water level gauges and they're insulated. So if there's insulation on there, we'd want the system to remove so we can take a look at the condition of that water level gauge. Here's a pressure tank that has vegetation growth around it. So this would we would want the system to cut down on those vegetation and clean up a bit around their pressure tank. We want to ensure that the system is providing good water pressure throughout their water system. So we're going to be looking for these pressure gauges to make sure that nothing less than 20 PSI is being observed during our inspection. We'll take a look at backflow prevention documentation, and if there's correct assemblies in place for like commercial service connections or restaurants or hospitals, car washes. If there's not, then that would be a potential deficiency because you want to protect the community or your customers as well as protecting your water source from possible incidents regarding backflow. If you guys are connected with a non-potable system, are there correct labels? Is there correct backflow between those two, your potable and your non-potable connections? And then for communities, we do check for their emergency operations plans. The plan should entail all of these items here, or they should address all of these items, and what the system will take to assure continuation of a service following any of these emergency situations. And this is a requirement of Title 18, Chapter 4, Article 204 of the Arizona Administrative Code. These requirements are typical for all community water systems, regardless of size, and they're required to be developed and maintained in that document. So the document should detail physical and technical aspects of the water system's operations, such as maintaining proper water pressure, collapse of a major structure, loss of chemical components like pumps or valves. What are the alternative water supply? The EOP should address public notice procedures for consumers and regulatory agencies. And the best way to describe this document is, of course, maybe step one would be contact your water operator. They're knowledgeable. They should be knowledgeable about these emergency procedures. However, if a system were to sell their water system, or the system owner and the operator are on vacation for a whole month and something goes on with the water system and the person in charge this would be the document they would look to see what procedures they need to do if situation XYZ were to happen. And that's what we're looking for water systems, to have this readily available on site or in digital copies. We just want to know that the water system has a process where this is kept and everyone knows about it and knows where to find it. Okay, that's pretty much what I had mentioned earlier. Here's an example of our template that we provide in the pre-confirmation email, as well as on our ADEQ website. You can, since these presentations will be available for everyone later on, these links do work. So if you don't have an emergency operations plan, or you want to update your operations plan, you can follow this link and it'll take you to this fillable document, and everything that is required to be in the emergency operations plan is in this template. So you just get together with your operator or your staff and just start filling out these areas of the document, and then during the next inspection, when they ask for the EOP, there you go. You just provide that document. Okay, and then going back to the inspection report, we'll take a look at the pumps. Are they in an enclosed building? Is they protected? Are there leaks? If there's leaks, that would be potential deficiency. Are these components and components such as like wells, storage tanks, treatment facilities, components, do they have their approval to construct and approval of construction documentation? That is one of the main paperwork documentation we'll ask about if we, during our file review, we don't find any of these documents. All systems should try to have a good historical process of saving correspondences from ADEQ, any approvals, exemption documents. For sure, if you get time, I would definitely take a look at these links down here. And if you ever want to update or add any components to your water system, just be aware that ADQ will require approval to construct, any approval of construction documentation. Operators requirements, if you guys have a operator in direct charge, are they certified at the correct grade that the facility is required to have? If your facility is a grade 3 or a grade 4 facility, and that could be distribution or treatment, are there operators on site for those water systems? Is the relief operator correctly certified, no lower than 1 grade below the water system? If you have a remote operator, are they within 200 miles of the facility? Is the remote operator inspecting the water system at least monthly to ensure proper operation and maintenance? Does the remote operator instruct or provide written instructions to the on-site representative? If you do have a certified operator that is a remote operator and you want to, your system owner, and you want to be a little bit more up to date with what they are observing every month, ADQ has this operator monthly inspection form that you system owners and admins can use or work with their certified operator to conduct every month. And it's just a inspection form, what time they came to the system, what who they were with, who was the operator, what their observations were when they came by. Was the disinfectant that was that's being used, is it properly full? Is the chlorinator properly working? Was the screen torn at the overflow, or was the air vent at the well broken? Does it need to be replaced? So it's a good practice to have a good record of your operation and maintenance for a facility. Towards the end of the inspection, there will be a section in the report that discusses observations, recommendations, and potential deficiencies. Any, like, let's say you got the cracked well slab, that will be noted in this section here. ATC AOC was missing for 3 brand new storage tanks that were observed during the inspection. Those items would be in this section here. Any inventory changes to the water system would be noted in this section. Population changes, service connection changes, inactivation of system components. If you need to update, if John Smith left and then William Smith came and replaced him, that information would be here. Monitoring and reporting. This again is regarding, are you guys up to date with your samples? Are you guys sampling when you guys are required to sample? Do you guys have your consumer confidence report delivered to your community water system customers? Do you guys have any issues with any of these required contaminants? If you sample for any, or if you're required to sample for any of these. So this whole sheet would typically be for a whole community water system, but if you're a transient system, we're only looking for the coliform requirements or the nitrate requirements. And yeah, and is everything in order? Is everything in place? No missing samples, no missing public notices. We'll also get a general sketch of the system. Here's an example pretty much of a basic water system. There's a well, there's a chlorination going on, goes through 1 storage tank, and then after the storage tank, there's an EPDS sampling tap before it goes into the distribution system. Last is the system grade. We'll grade all water systems every time we're going out to the inspection. And the grades aren't based on like pass fail type of grading. It's the complexity of what your water system is. So in this particular example, the system does not treat for any contaminants. Like there's no arsenic treatment or nitrate treatment. They're not a surface water system, so they get no treatment grade. They do, however, they did end up getting graded as a D2 because they serve more than 500 people. Their groundwater system. So that's when we start to do the math and start issuing points for whatever they have within their water system. So this system ended up with 9 points, and which led them to be considered a grade 2. So grade changes do happen during inspections. If a system went from having 0 treatment to installing arsenic treatment, they would typically go from a 0 treatment graded facility to maybe a treatment 1, depending on what components they have and how the points ended up. Last on the inspection report is the result of the inspection. To tie it all back to the beginning of the presentation, if there was no issues, no deficiencies that were observed, then the results of the inspection would be checked off here. If there were deficiencies noted, but the system was in contact the day or the day after, like with corrections or missing documentation, that would be the result of this inspection. Like no ADQ action will be result of this inspection. However, if there was no permits found, or if the well slab was not in place, but it's going to take time for them to install it, it's not going to take a day or 2 to install that well slab. So it'd be alleged deficiencies were noted during the inspection. And then correspondence regarding this will be forthcoming. So, and then this goes into, again, Natalie's portion of today's presentations. She'll take it over from there. That is all I've got for what to expect when inspected. So hopefully I was able to clear some things up or give some information that is going to be helpful for public water systems when they have inspections coming up.
Thank you so much, Laprelle. There is one question in here, and if there are any other questions, now would be a great time to submit those. But this one question here for you is on the pressure gauges. If they're not connected to hydro, but before hydro, between the booster and hydro inside a well house to protect them from weather, is that okay?
Say that again?
Yeah, for sure. Regarding pressure gauges, if they're not connected to hydro, but before hydro, between booster and hydro, sounds like it's inside a well house protecting it from the weather, if that's okay.
Yeah, we don't see an issue with that. Preferably we would want pressure gauges before and after hydro tanks, just in case there's differences in different portions of the water system. But that wouldn't be an issue if we were to come across that. If that weren't in place during inspection, it wouldn't be an issue during the inspection.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laprelle. It looks like that is the only question for now. But thanks again for that presentation. I think that was a very thorough and informative look at inspections. I think no one can say they didn't see what's coming during an inspection after that. Up next, we do have an overview of public notices from 2 of our CACs, Bella and Gavin. I can give screen control to one of you. Who has the presentation for us here?
I do. I'll be presenting today.
Perfect. I will send you screen control then. And whenever you are ready, you are welcome to take it away.
Awesome.
Presentation looks good there.
Perfect. Okay. Just give me one sec. Alrighty, okay, I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Bella Mohachi. I am the CAC for Cochise and Santa Cruz County. Today I'll be going over the public notice rule and the Arizona Drinking Water Act. And so it's basically just going over the different types of public notices. We'll be talking about just how you'll be communicating with your customers about any exceedances or anything like that. So let's get started. So we'll go over just a brief introduction, go over the types, required content. We'll go over the templates and their certificate of public notice distribution. Submitting a public notice, we'll do some quick exercises. We'll draft a public notice, and then we'll go over some helpful tips. All right, and here's just some metrics to go over. So only 65% of public notices are distributed on time. So it's really important for water systems to understand that they need to be submitted and posted and be aware of those requirements and schedules that they have open. And so let's see, yeah, so we have over 1,500 public water systems that currently have a requirement to post a public notice. We've had over 6,000 public notices triggered from 2021 to 2025. Majority of those are missed monitoring. Those are tier 3 public notices. And then secondly, we have exceeding health standards, 722. And then others, we have 829. Okay. So what is a public notice? A public notice is a notification of violations of the National Primary Drinking Water Regulations. It's any communication to customer or consumers to ensure that they know when there's a problem with their drinking water or if there's been issues with the operation of the water system. Sorry, my cat likes to jump on my stuff. So who completes the public notices? The owners and operators of the public water systems are responsible for providing the public notices to their customers, including consecutive connections. And this rule does apply to all public water systems. And so now we'll go over the types of public notices. So we'll start with Tier 1 public notices. So Tier 1 violations, those are going to be for maximum contaminant levels, also known as MCLs, or treatment technique violations for acute contaminants. And those include contaminants like E. coli, turbidity, nitrate, chlorine dioxide, any waterborne disease outbreaks, and those that pose serious health risks that can cause bad implications like death, those are required to have timely notification. And so this is just an example of the template that you would use if you had an E. coli exceedance or E. coli detection in your drinking water. This is what you would send out to your customers. This is the type of template that you would see coming from ADEQ that you would use and fill out. Okay, and so there are different distribution methods for each type of public notice. So the Tier 1 public notices, those ones for the MCLs or acute contaminants, those have to be issued within 24 hours of the notification of exceedance. And you can do that through television/radio broadcasting, posting within the system, like if you're in a school, you would post it above like the water fountains and the bathrooms, that sort of thing. Hand delivery, or any other delivery method that's approved by the regulatory agency. All right, and then we have Tier 2 public notices. Those ones are going to be for chronic contaminants, MCL violations, or treatment technique violations. So those will be for arsenic, TTHMs, and HAA5s, radionuclides, VOCs, SOCs, assessments for RTCR, which is the revised total coliform rule, lead and copper treatment technique violations, anything that has long-term exposure and can pose serious health risks. And this is just another example of a, excuse me, a template from ADEQ that you would use if you had arsenic above drinking water standards or levels above drinking water standards. All right, and so those will be issued within 30 days of notification of the violation. So it's different from Tier 1. Tier 1 is 24 hours. Tier 2 is 30 days. And so community water systems, they can mail or direct delivery to their customers, and they can also do a publication in a local newspaper or post in a public location within the system, as well as online, like if they have a website. And non-community water systems, they would post in other conspicuous locations within the system. They would also do the publication in a local newspaper. They would email staff and students or delivery of copies in central locations. All right, and then we have Tier 3 public notices. So some examples of a Tier 3 violation would be mismonitoring, reporting violations, availability of unregulated contaminant results, or exceedance of a fluoride secondary MCL. And then this is just another example. This is just about mismonitoring. So I don't know if you can see, it shows the contaminant, says required sampling frequency, number of samples that were required, when the sample should have been taken, and when they were taken. Okay, and then here are the distribution methods for a Tier 3. So yeah, we went over that. So this would be issued within a year of notification of the violation, but the sooner the better. So this isn't necessarily saying, you know, you really should wait a full year to do the Tier 3, but you technically do have that time to get it done. And non-community water systems, it's the same. They can post in those conspicuous locations. They can do publication, emails, central locations. But for community water systems, they can also do, you know, posting online, but they can put it in their CCRs, their consumer confidence reports as well. So that would work too, like if you wanted to just do that instead of posting it and not having to wait the whole year, you can just put it in your CCR. Okay, so here's some scenarios. So the Tier 2 public notice issue within 30 days. That would be for, an example would be just the running annual average for TTHMs. Tier 1 annual nitrate sample exceeds the MCL, or a routine monthly RTCR revised total coliform rule sample comes back total coliform positive or E. coli positive. And E. coli positive, and the system fails to take their repeats, or a repeat sample is total coliform positive. And for Tier 2, if a public water system fails to complete a required level 1 assessment, they'd have that 30 days. And then Tier 3, this would be like if they didn't do their lead and copper samples, just like for mismonitoring. Here's some other examples. So for triggered groundwater sample that was missed after total coliform positive, that'd be like testing your raw water in your wells. Or your failure to submit the lead service line inventory. That deadline was October 16th, 2024. So we have a handful of systems that do have to do those Tier 3 public notices. Or they have their unknown, so they listed their lead service lines as unknown in their inventory. And so there are 10 required elements for a public notice, and we'll go over those quickly. So it has to have a description of the violation or situation, including contaminants and results. It has to say when the violation or situation occurred. This is just an example. This one's just saying our system recently violated a drinking water standard. The testing results showed that our system exceeded the standard or maximum contaminant level MCL. And it just has like the average as well. It has to have the potential adverse health effects, including the required standard language, populations at risk, including subpopulations that are vulnerable to that contaminant. So this example is saying people who drink water that contains arsenic in excess of the MCL over many years could have skin damage, problems with their circulatory system, or increased risks of cancer. All right, and then it has to also say whether there is an alternate source of water that should be used, what actions consumers should take, including seeking medical attention if needed, and what the system is doing to correct the issue. and when it's expected to be resolved. So this is an example here. It says you don't need to use an alternative water supply, but if you have specific health concerns, consult your doctor. They are installing arsenic removal treatment. They anticipate that it'll be resolved in 6 months. And it will have the name, business address, and phone number for the owner and the operator of the system. A statement to encourage recipients to further distribute the notice to other water users in that system. So this is just an example. It just has some contact information there. And then this one, this is probably, I think, in every template that ADEQ has. It just says, please share this information with all the people that drink this water, especially those who may have not received this notice directly, people at apartments, nursing homes, schools, businesses. You can just post this in a public place. And so they also have multilingual requirements. So if you have a system that is serving a large number of non-English speakers, like in other areas in Arizona, I know there's a lot of Spanish-speaking areas here, or on the reservations and stuff like that. We definitely want to have the appropriate language for people so that they are able to have a translated copy so they understand the notices. All right, and then this is just templates. So ADEQ has public notice templates to make sure that all 10 required components are included in your notice. And so in those templates, it'll just have, it'll have a highlighted section showing what needs to be filled out by your system. I don't know if they're all highlighted, but it'll have it in brackets where you need to fill in that information. And so that little link down there on the bottom left, that's going to be where you'll find it. It's just going to be if you go under AZEQ website and then compliance assistance, you'll be able to find all of those public notice templates. And then required with those public notices, you will also have to do a certificate of public notice distribution. So this is essentially what like I will use as a CAC to understand where, like, the date that it was certified, how it was distributed to the public, and just, you know, all the ins and outs of that, and how I know that it was done in completion and done in a timely manner. Okay, so here's a quick exercise that we can do. And so I can't see the questions on my end for some reason or anything like that. So I'm just gonna kind of just let you guys answer the questions on your own and have that answer in your brain, and then we'll go through it. So
I can read them out
first...
for you, Bella, if you'd like, as they come in.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. If you want to just put your answers in the chat, that'd be great. So our first scenario is a public water system completes their routine monthly RTCR, which is the revised total coliform rule monitoring, but their sample comes back total coliform positive and E. coli positive, and their system fails to take their repeats, or their repeat sample is total coliform positive. What type of public notice is required?
Seeing a couple tier ones coming in.
Awesome.
24-hour.
Yeah. Yep. So that's correct. It is a tier 1 public notice. It has to be distributed within 24 hours. Great job. All right, we'll do the next one. So here we have, during routine monitoring, your public water system detects selenium at 0.09 milligrams per liter. The MCL for selenium is 0.05. So this is an SOC, which is a synthetic organic chemical. So what type of PN or public notice would be required for this contaminant? This is a chronic contaminant exceedance, not acute.
Couple brave souls saying tier 2. See 30 days. More tier 2s coming in.
Oops. Yeah, so this is a tier 2, since it is a chronic contaminant, so they do have 30 days to complete, so that's correct. All right, and then our last question. So public water system failed to submit their lead service line inventory by the October 6, 2024 deadline, or they reported unknown galvanized requiring replacements for their lead service line in their inventory. What type of public notice would be required for this?
And there are tier 3s, 365
Awesome.
days.
Yay, awesome. Yeah, so we've got tier 3, and then those, if you do still have unknowns, that would be recurring annually. All right, and then we'll go over some little tips and tricks here. So first tip, have your CAC, like me, review your notice before you issue it. And there are, different CACs for every county. And so you'll be able to have their contact information. Plan ahead, start drafting those notices as soon as possible. Don't wait until the last minute. If you have a tier 3, don't wait a full, the full 12 months to get that done. You can do it as soon as you can. That way you just have it knocked out of the park. You don't have to have that, sitting over you guys. And it's even worse when you miss it because then you're like, oh man, I had a whole year to do it. All right, and then be specific, include as much detail as possible. And then quickly, we can just draft a quick public notice together. And so here is our scenario. So our public water system, Phoenix Elementary School, has a nitrate exceedance of the MCL. This is what we know. So their routine result was received 2022. And it was 15 milligrams per liter. Confirmation result was received 2 days later. The result was 12 milligrams per liter. The system is supplying bottled water until a new well can be drilled in August. Let's just pretend this is 2026 or 2025. Principal Franklin is fully aware of the situation and corrective actions. And so first thing we'll do is find the corresponding public notice template on our website. We will replace the highlighted text with the required information. And this is the required information here. It's just putting in what we just saw. Okay, so we'll go over the different things that we're going to be filling out here. So as you can see, we filled in the name of the system, the dates that those were collected, our levels, and then what's being done. So they're saying that our water system will be supplying bottled water until the new well can be drilled. This will be resolved within 3 months, so they anticipate it being resolved. And then they have the contact information for more information. That's really important there. And then your water system ID and the date distributed. That's all important. And then the date distributed as well, that will go on your certificate of public notice distribution. All right, make any additional edits, send to our friendly CAC for review. Once it's approved, we will distribute that notice within any of those distribution methods that we spoke about before, because they are a bit different depending on the different tiers. But for this scenario, this was a tier 1 public notice. So this one, they can do electronic distribution. They can contact the impacted school district, send copies to that public, or send that public notice home with the students, so their parents can understand what's going on. And then they would post that notice, in all the water fountains and sinks and hallways. And this is just an example of a school. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Bram, if you could let me know if anybody has had any questions in the chat. I don't know why they're just not popping up for me.
No worries. I do have 2 questions here, it looks like. One, for a non-transient, non-community water system, is email an approved form of public notice distributed to all customers?
Yeah, so I think we had a slide back here. Let's see. Let me just go really quick. So, goodness gracious. Sorry, it was way further than I thought it was. Okay, so for his question was, I'm sorry, non-community water systems for just all of the notices?
Yeah, let me verify. Yeah, non-transient, non-community water systems if email is approved.
Yeah, so it says email here, staff and students, or delivery in central locations. But it says and here, so we would have to also post it in a conspicuous location within the system.
Perfect. And the other question here so far is who is the current CAC for Yavapai County?
That's a great question. I believe it's Bailey, but let me check.
I
Let me
think
just
it's
pull that up
Bailey
for you.
too. I've got the
Yeah, I believe it's
contact.
Bailey.
Yeah, I can pull up really quick this here. You should be able to find the contact. Let me just pull it up on my screen so we can all look at it together. Okay, can everybody see this here on my screen? Oh, awesome.
Yes,
There you go,
yeah,
Brian.
that should be viewable.
So here's a list of all of our CCs by county. So here's mine. I'm Coach Houston Santa Cruz. This is my number and email. And then for whatever your county is, this is going to be your corresponding CAC. So this is who you'll reach out to if you have those public notice requirements. They are the ones who monitor the schedules, also your monitoring requirements for your sampling as well. So we're a good resource for that. So I would say he did put that in the chat, so make sure you have access to that. I would say like bookmark it on your computer if you can. That's going to be a great resource for you. All right. Was there any other questions from anybody?
That looks like it for now.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, it looks like we are taking a little break now. Bram, did you want to fill in with anything before we take our break and come back?
Yeah, let me hop back over here.
Let's stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Natalie. So we do have a little 15-minute break here. We'll come right back at 10. We'll come back at 10:05 and get started with Natalie's presentation. A couple notes before we go grab snacks and run to the bathroom and all of that. Again, if you have any questions, azopstart@azdeq.gov. I'll be following up after this webinar with a little survey. We would love to get your feedback on it, and then that way you have our contact here if you need to follow up with any questions. And again, if your system is ready and willing to volunteer for that TMF 2.0 survey, I have the CapDev email address up there as well. And as a final notice, I'll be sending it out in the email as well. For any of you in the Flagstaff area, our next event is an in-person workshop at the Flagstaff's Rio de Flag reclamation plant. We'll be having an all-day in-person workshop on security readiness and emergency preparedness. And I'm pretty excited about it. I've been working with our contractors to get that program put together. So if you are up north or if you know anyone in that area, that will be available for 7 PDHs, but I also think it's just going to be a generally really useful workshop. So I'll be sending the registration link out to that as well after this webinar. But we're on a break. Come back at 10:05 and we'll keep things going. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good chance to stretch your legs there. We've got 2 more presentations for you this morning. I've just passed screen controls over to Natalie. We're going to carry on with a presentation on NOCs and NOVs. Screen looks good there, Natalie, so we're ready when you are.
All right, good morning. Wanted to show my face here very quickly, but my internet is not great, so it's gonna turn off right away. Good morning, everyone. I'm Natalie Jarrett. I'm a drinking water inspector with ADEQ. I'll go ahead and jump right into it. Please just leave any questions if you have any. We'll get started with a little agenda. So I'll do an introduction on myself and the rule regarding NOCs and NOVs, how inspectors at ADEQ report on those deficiencies, the difference in the violations that you'll see on an NOC and an NOV, and then a little bit of time for discussion and questions. A little bit about myself. I moved to Arizona and started with ADEQ back in February of 2024. So I've been an inspector here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I did work for the state of Missouri doing wastewater and stormwater regulations. So I have a little bit of a cross-discipline background going on. And then I spent 3 years in Kansas working in a chemistry lab dealing with crops and pesticide residue. Jumping right into the, sorry about that, to the rule of the deficiencies. So this rule from the CFR is basically what inspectors use to determine if a deficiency that we see on site is significant or not. And the big takeaway from the rule is what I have underlined there, which is the potential or already causing introduction of a contamination into the water delivered to your consumers. So anything that has the potential or is already causing public health risk, safety risk, environmental risk, we can use that as a determining factor to consider a deficiency that we see on site as significant. You saw this just in Laprel's presentation, but I wanted to show it again here. This is the results of the inspection page on the report that you receive after the site visit. So if your system doesn't have any potential deficiencies, that first box will be checked. If you do have deficiencies, that last box will be checked, that we noted deficiencies during the inspection, and some correspondence will be forthcoming. If that box is checked solely and not the ones below it, then that indicates to you and your system that there was only minor violations during the inspections. If the deficiencies that the inspector saw on site were significant, one of those 4 boxes at the bottom will be checked. And that's following the statute. You can see at the top there, it also has the links, 41/1009, Section E. It states, unless otherwise provided by state or federal law, the agencies shall provide the regulated person with an opportunity to correct the alleged deficiencies unless the agency documents in writing as a part of the inspection that the alleged deficiencies are one of the following boxes. So committed intentionally, not correctable within a reasonable period of time, an evidence of non-compliance, or a significant risk to any person, public health, safety, or welfare, or the environment. So that last box is what we saw in the statute on the previous slide. Committed intentionally and evidence of non-compliance are kind of self-explanatory. Obviously, if we feel that this is a pattern or it was committed intentionally, going to be immediately deemed as a significant deficiency on our end. So if you see one of these 4 boxes checked on your inspection report, you can assume that you have a significant deficiency and that it will be reported as such. So this is how inspectors will report on the deficiencies, and I'll get into more details on the next couple slides about significant versus minor. But I wanted to give an overview here on the different type of case letters that we generate. And we do use the word case letter and NOC or NOV pretty interchangeably. So just get used to that as well. So a notice of opportunity to correct for a system or an NOC is when the inspection report details only minor deficiencies. So think screens, stuff like that, minor physical deficiencies that don't have an immediate impact on human health. A notice of violation would be when the inspection report details at least one significant deficiency. I wanted to point that out because you could have 5 minor violations that the inspector reported on during the site visit, but if you have only one significant deficiency, it translates the whole case letter into a notice of violation. We can also have on the reports recommendations, as Laprelle mentioned as well. This does not result in a case letter, but I wanted to put it in here to give you some guidance on what that may look like. So recommendations are insignificant or non-citable comments that are mentioned on the report, but cannot and will not be put into a case letter. Kind of a caveat here is that if a recommendation has been mentioned several times over the inspection cycles and it has not been resolved, we can then use that as evidence of pattern of noncompliance and mark it as a deficiency at the time of our inspection. Obviously, the ideal inspection result scenario is no case recommended, right? Ideal for you operators, ideal for ADEQ as well, because that means your system is in compliance. This can happen one of 2 ways, right? The inspection went very well. There were no deficiencies found at all. Maybe recommendations, maybe observations, but no deficiencies were called out. Or there were deficiencies mentioned during the site visit, discussed during the site visit, but you, the operator or the system, proved that those were complete before the case letter was generated or sent. And once again, case letter is an NOC or an NOV. So if an inspector sees something during the site visit, calls it out in the report, but then you send a photo of that same deficiency fixed the next day or within a couple of days, we do not generate case letters for things that have already been solved, right? So it's a good idea to try to get on those actions as soon as you can, and that way you don't have to go around with the timeline of the case letter, the notice of violation, or the notice of opportunity to correct violations. I want to get a little bit more specific about significant versus minor violations. I have some examples here. Obviously, it's not exhaustive. So we can see a lot of different quirks on site, and a lot of different things are happening on site, system to system. So this list is definitely not exhaustive, but it gives you a good idea of what we're looking for when we're talking about significant versus minor violations. So once again, significant violations will be translated into a notice of violation case letter, and minor violations will be translated onto a notice of opportunity to correct. I like to say physical deficiencies are typically minor while paperwork is significant. Think significant as those open monitoring violations like the public notices that Bella talked about, missing or inadequate paperwork and sampling plans. So you don't have an EOP ready, an MSSP, a DBP, things like that. So also permitting is a very big one we've been seeing recently at ADEQ that's getting called out more and more as we get better about the permitting side of things as well. Permitting is a big significant violation. We want to make sure that all of your components are up to drinking water quality standards and have been engineered appropriately as well. So that's always going to be a significant violation for us. Backflow prevention, cross-contamination deficiencies, a big significant deficiency that we see quite often at systems, especially recently. It's just something you got to look out for. Obviously, backflow prevention is key to protect your consumers from any cross-contamination. But don't forget, it's not just installing the device, it's testing it annually as well and making repairs as needed. And kind of on a similar paperwork topic is lack of operation and maintenance manual. So if you have treatment or anything of the sort and you don't have a manual that describes how to use it, if in case of emergencies, that will be significant for us as well. On the other side, we have the minor violations. Like I said, it's not going to be an exhaustive list here, but it definitely gives you a good idea of the physical deficiencies being minor while the paperwork is significant. And I'll give you some examples of times where a physical deficiency may not be minor because it does pose an immediate health risk. But speaking of minor violations, it's just lack of screens, leaks or cracks in the well slab, incorrect sampling tap locations, either raw water or EPDS locations, general well maintenance, case rehab, and then tank maintenance as well. So we want to see those hatches, the gaskets, the vent screens. We want to see no vegetation in the foundation. And leaks on the storage tank as well are called out as minor unless they have gotten to a point of no return. Diving a little bit more into the storage tank photo requirements, because it's something I see quite frequently. We do not claim storage tanks no matter the height and also no matter how good the view is at the top of the tank. Therefore, we require the photos of the hatch and the gasket, so hatch open and closed, and the vent if you can't see these things from the ground, so the vent screen as well. You guys, systems and operators, should be sending photos before the inspection or have them ready to show during the site visit. This will allow us to be able to comment or have you guys get back up there if necessary to get a better photo, either before the inspection or during the site visit, as opposed to going back and forth after the visit during email to talk about changes that might need to be made. So those are just some things we look for. I have some example photos on the next slide. So we want to see that the hatch is locked, secured in some form or fashion, either at the hatch itself or the ladder that takes to get up there. We're looking to see that the gaskets are in good condition and they fit tightly, they seal the hatch. And we're also looking to see that storage tank vent is screened with non-corrodable mesh, number 16, of course. So I have some photos here. These are some good example photos. I really love the labeling of these as well, especially if your system has multiple tanks. It's really nice for the inspector to be able to see which one we're looking at and making sure everything's good on that one tank. Clearly everything was good in these photos, and I appreciated the detail that was put into these as well. I also have an example of a gasket that's not quite appropriate for the type of hatch that we're seeing here. It doesn't create a full seal on there. So this was a minor deficiency that I called out on site, obviously when I saw the photos, and then translated it into a notice of opportunity to correct, or an NOC. And this is the result of that NOC, is a new gasket that's appropriate for that bolted type hatch that was installed. I also want to quickly go over a kind of an example just to kind of whet your guys' beaks on inspectors finding a minor deficiency, but because it poses a risk to human health, that's when we can use our best judgment and that first regulation that I showed you to take something that possibly could be considered minor because it's a physical deficiency. It's about operations and maintenance, but turning it into significant because of the human health aspect to it. So we can and should use best judgment to determine if something that was minor is now a risk to health in any form or fashion. So this is a personal example that I saw. Underground reservoir that's being utilized as a floating storage tank. Open the hatch, there's a bird's nest in there. The bird's nowhere to be found, which was a little bit concerning, of course. The questions that came into my mind were, how did the bird get in? Where is it now? And is there any lingering bacteria, harmful bacteria that this is adding to this tank that is then getting fed out into the distribution system? So this is just one example, but there are plenty of them where something that maybe could be seen as minor if circumstances were right is now significant because of the immediate risk to your consumer's health. And I have another example here in the right-hand corner, a tank I saw on site clearly in very bad condition, has been like that for I'm not sure how long, right? Clearly took some time to get to the point it was. And as you saw in that slide about significant and minor violations, a leak would typically be considered minor. In this case, I would move this to significant because the damage to the tank is so significant. It's past the point of just repairs. It probably needs to be replaced. So this is something that would transform from, calling it out as a leak and a minor deficiency to calling it out as a significant deficiency for a full replacement of the tank. And then the left-hand corner, we have a clear example of a minor deficiency. The screen just needs to be replaced there. It looks like a well vent. And then that bottom photo, a little bit of an odd situation, right? The tank is very clearly not graded appropriately, probably won't fill up to the top or overflows constantly because of its angle. Depending if that was the only tank on site, you as an inspector, we could probably consider that significant because they don't have storage requirements at that point that are meeting the requirements. But because they have a separate tank, you could consider it minor. You could have them take that tank offline while they fix the gradient. So this just kind of is an example of how we use our best judgment and our discretion to determine when something is really an immediate risk for the system or for the consumers of the water. I have just a written example there as well. The inspector comes on site, your MSSP is current with the sampling information, but your contact information has changed and you have not updated your MSSP. The inspector might call that out as a minor deficiency if it's not fixed by the time of the inspection or the day after. But on the flip side, if the inspector gets on site and the MSSP was just not provided to the inspector, and while you're on site, the MSSP location is not even known. So in an emergency, there's no way for someone to get a hold of the sampling information. This is something that an inspector could deem as significant because it is directly related to your bacteria sampling and significant to the consumer health as well. I wanted to dive a little bit into the recommendation versus no deficiencies. I won't spend too much time on this, but are they the same thing? When we're talking about these in relation to a case letter, then yes, they are the same thing, because finding no deficiencies or simply making a recommendation on site does not lead ADEQ inspectors to generate a case letter. So if your inspection report cites no deficiencies and only has recommendations, give yourself a thumbs up, because there won't be a case letter generated. There will not be an NOC or an NOV that you guys are going to have to tackle later. And then again, with that caveat of, if the same recommendations have been made inspection cycle after inspection cycle with no improvement, the inspector does have the authority to cite the system for inappropriate operation and maintenance. Of course, if the recommendation doesn't really affect your water quality or the consumer health at all, we'll probably leave it as a recommendation. But if something has gotten worse over time with no fixes, then that is something the inspector could cite as inappropriate operation and maintenance per R18-4203. Some recommendation examples are having the well number posted at the well site. Always a good idea, right? If you have multiple wells, to be able to pinpoint any complaints or any problems, you know which well is having the issues based on the number that's posted. But it doesn't have really any effect on the water quality or potential human health risks, so it pretty much stays a recommendation. Another example is level indicators on a storage tank, the mechanical ones. Not a necessity, but definitely good to have as an operator or a system owner. You want to know what level your tank's at, make sure that you're filling your tank up enough and that it's letting out enough water for your consumers. But it's just a recommendation to have that, right? And similarly, a site gauge on your hydro pneumatic tank is also a recommendation. Once again, just a good idea to have a visual check, but it's not something that inspectors will cite while doing the inspection. And then, of course, no deficiencies is what every system should strive for. And I know Laprelle mentioned it in her presentation as well, but that pre-inspection checklist that we send in the pre-inspection emails, if you're using that, going over it prior to the site visit, that's going to significantly increase your chance at a no deficiency inspection. This pre-inspection checklist has everything that we're looking for. It obviously has that second page to it with photos as well, but going through this checklist with all yeses, I have a good idea that when we get on site that your system will have no deficiencies, because this is exactly what we're looking for. A few example photos of just systems that had called out deficiencies during the inspection and had a case letter as a result of it, and kind of showing you the difference between non-compliance and compliance and what was able to close out that inspection. So this is a before photo. The chlorinator was obviously not being used, kind of hard to see, but very dusty. Open that lid right there, and there was some stagnant water in there as well. So a bit concerning. It was still connected to the system with that stagnant water. This is what I accepted as compliance, so completely disconnected from the injection point. The chlorinator drum itself was cleaned up a little bit, I think washed out as well. This chlorinator was also not permitted, so kind of a double whammy there of having that stagnant water possibly being able to be pumped into your system and not having it approved by ADEQ, but the disconnection of the chlorinator and cleaning up of the drum was enough to achieve compliance for the system. And you can see it looks a little bit better in that after photo as well. This is quite an extreme transformation, but this is a well that one of the inspectors saw on site. A lot going on here, no slab, maybe some holes in the casing at the top there, some just general maintenance needed for exposed wires, vent screens, etc. A lot going on here. Obviously, a case letter was generated, and this is the final result of what that used to look like and what it looks like now. So inspectors use these deficiencies and case letters to make improvements for your system, to have you guys make improvements for your system that will hopefully keep the longevity of your system for years to come. So things that are going to help your system, things that will prevent you from having to do larger work later, is really the goal of creating these case letters and giving you guys deficiencies, is to keep everyone healthy, of course, and to keep your system components as long as you can with as little maintenance as you can, right? And we can all agree that this after photo looks significantly better than that before photo in both of these cases. I wanted to touch a little bit on deadlines. So ADEQ inspectors give the system a compliance deadline to reach. So the NOC or the NOV will have that timeline for each of the deficiencies that we saw on site. These deadlines cannot exceed 120 days. We do not have in rule the ability to give a system more than 120 days. Even if we think it's necessary, we're kind of handcuffed by that rule. But we can also give deadlines as low as 15 days. Let's say for a public notice requirement that's 4 years past due. It's time to get that in. We'll give you a shorter timeline if we think you can reach it. But of course, the timeline should always be reasonable. The inspector is always going to discuss with you at the end of the inspection what you think is a reasonable amount of time. It's got to be an achievable goal, and we try to stay consistent for specific violations, for specific deficiencies. So at the end of the inspection, you have X, Y, and Z that is being called out by the inspector. We'll have that conversation with you. Hey, do you think that you can get these items done in 60 days? Do you think that you need more time? Is more time appropriate for you? Do you have other things going on within the system? But the timeline should always be reasonable, right? If we're just asking for vegetation to be removed from the storage tank, highly unlikely that an inspector will give you 4 months, so 120 days to do that, when 30 days is a reasonable amount of time depending on the circumstances. But this is why we always discuss with the operator or the system representative at the end of the inspection, just so we're on the same page, and that when the case letter comes, there is no surprises. Transparency is key, right? And this timeline, so whatever the days we've agreed on, this timeline starts once the system receives the case letter. So I send it Tuesday, 3 p.m. You see it Tuesday, 3 p.m. That's when the timeline, the deadline starts. So you'll have 120 days from that day you received it. The only caveat to this would be if I send a NOC or NOV at 6 p.m. on a Friday or something like that, I would generally consider that you received the letter maybe that Monday, and then that deadline would start. So that's kind of how we determine it. And like I said, it's really important to let the inspector know if it doesn't feel like a reasonable timeline before you get the case letter. So have those discussions in person, over email, over the phone, and really hash it out with us, because we can be flexible and we like to be flexible as long as we know that you're already thinking ahead, putting in a plan to make the work happen within that time frame. I have a little bit of kind of a trivia going on. I know that we have a chat. I'm just going to give you guys a second. You can think about it, put it in the chat, but I won't stop for too long on this slide. I do have some time open for questions and discussions as well. So they all say number one, but we'll start with the first one on the page. The gasket on the storage tank is deteriorated and does not seal properly. Do you think that this is a significant violation or a minor violation? Give you a few seconds to think about it. Put it in the chat, write it down, whatever you feel.
We've got a couple minors and a couple significants as well.
Awesome. So I clicked it a little ahead of schedule, but it is minor, right? It's a physical deficiency. It doesn't have a direct impact on human health. It can if it's deteriorating into the storage tank, or if it's so bad that there's no seal at all. But typically this is minor for us unless it's a reoccurring problem for you. So this is going to be minor. And once again, kind of think of physical deficiency versus paperwork when we're thinking significant versus minor. That second one there, also labeled number one, the storage tank was constructed after the last inspection and your system did not get permit approval. What are we thinking there?
Seems pretty unanimously significant for this one.
Correctamundo. So permitting, once again, paperwork is going to be significant. Anything related to the addition of water system components without permitting, of course, is going to be labeled as significant by us and results in a notice of violation. Number 3, the well slab has minor cracks around the casing.
Seems like everyone's saying minor for 3.
Indeed, very good. So not really going to affect you directly, but if left unchecked, will create larger cracks, more opportunity for rainwater to get down into the aquifer directly, corrode your casing. So this is something that we call out as a minor deficiency before it gets too bad, right? The system has open monitoring violations for missing DBP samples from the last 2 years.
Lots of significance coming through.
Very significant, right? You're missing an annual sample and you have not public notice for them. So these violations are still open. So there's a lot going on here, right? You've missed your samples or the lab hasn't uploaded them, but you're also haven't created your public notices for missing these yet. So it's kind of twofold of the inspector will create a notice of violation to have you public notice for missing the DBP samples from the last 2 years. Of course, if those samples have not been taken and have not been analyzed by the lab during those years. And then we will also probably have you sign a commitment to sample letter because it's been 2 years in a row with no samples. We want to make sure that you guys are taking those samples the year of the inspection, no ifs, ands, and buts about it. The commitment to sample is kind of a whole different topic, but it basically gives us a way to close this violation if it's not within your monitoring period. So it's not over the summer or whenever your DBP samples are being taken. It gives us an opportunity to close that violation, but also have a commitment from you guys that this will get done this year, and going forward, you know the drill, basically. We'll move on to the next one. Household bleach is being used to disinfect the system. What are we thinking here?
There is a split on this one, but the majority is going to significant.
Yeah, good job. I can understand the split, right? Because we're thinking physical is minor, paperwork is significant, but think of the true definition of significant deficiency: causing or potential to cause contamination for the water consumers. So any chemical that's not NSF approved is going to be basically a contaminant at that point. So household bleach is not up to the standards of drinking water. So using that is definitely a significant deficiency, possible cause for contamination into the system. So just keep that in mind as well. NSF approved chemicals only, no household bleach. And then the last one, there is kind of a two-parter. So let's start with that first sentence. The EPDS location is before the hydropneumatic tank. Is that a minor, significant? What are you guys thinking?
Again, there's a mix in this one, about 50-50.
So this would be minor. Of course, EPDS location is extremely important because you want to get the most accurate sample of the water that's going into your distribution system. But the hydropneumatic tank hopefully isn't changing the water chemistry that much. So this would just be a minor violation. If we flip the script a little bit and the EPDS location is before, let's say, arsenic treatment for some reason, then we might look at it as significant because you're really not getting a representative sample when you're taking those annual samples at the EPDS. And the final kind of maybe a trick question here is, what if there are service connections before the hydropneumatic tank? So the EPDS is before the hydro tank, and there's also service connections before the hydro tank. What do we think there?
You're seeing a good mix again. I think they're leaning significant on this one.
I'm so sorry that this is a trick question. There would not be a deficiency on this at all because we look for the EPDS location to be before the first service connection. Obviously, a hydropneumatic tank is used for pressurizing the system, so I don't know that this situation would necessarily happen, but think of it maybe as like a tank as well. So if there's any service connections before you get to your storage tank, the EPDS would have to be before those service connections. So it cannot be after your storage tank. Therefore, the EPDS is in the correct location and there is no deficiency there. So sorry for a little bit of a trick question. That's all I had for trivia. I want to open it up to whatever questions you guys have and try to help you guys out with any answers that I can.
There were a couple questions from before the Q&A. Feel free to keep asking them as we go through these first. The first one was regarding the photos for the storage tanks. Do they need to be date stamped?
They do not need to be date stamped. I will say we keep old photos from the previous inspections. So don't try to pull a fast one and just show the same ones from 3 years ago. We usually, if it's been in a week or two or even a month of the inspection, I'll take those photos as current enough, and we'll go from there. But they don't need to be date and time stamped. Obviously looks really good if they are, so it's kind of just proof that they were taken recently, but no, not mandatory.
Awesome, thank you. Next question was regarding the seals on the overhatch, oval hatch, that is, of the storage tanks. Do you want the seal on the lid, or can the seal be put on the brim of the tank where the lid touches?
Yeah, either or, whatever is easiest to install or best for that type of hatch. I've seen both. I've approved both. We're really looking for, is it deteriorating? Is it old? Is it an appropriate material as well? And if it's on the lid or on the hatch itself, either one works as long as it seals really nicely.
Perfect. This question was regarding your first before and after with the detached chlorinator. The question is, why were they not required to remove the chlorinator completely so that it couldn't be reconnected later?
Yeah, that is a great question. I took what I could get. There was a lot going on this site besides the chlorinator that need to be dealt with. The disconnection was what I was after. Obviously, completely taking it out would have been great. In honesty, right, we can only see what's provided to us. So if they would have removed that from the image and just stuck it in the other corner, I would have thought it was removed as well. So I took disconnection and just cleaning up that chlorinator in general as compliance in that case. But typically, yeah, if you're not permitted, we would want to see it gone. But like I said, we can only see what you show us, for better or for worse. So they could have taken that out of the photo, but it just been in another corner of the room. So I decided to accept that as compliance because it was significantly cleaned up from when I saw it and fully disconnected at that time. Good question though.
Perfect. There are 2 more questions here so far. The first is, what app do you use to add timestamps and GPS coordinates to photos?
Ooh, that is a great question. I know Laprel uses that very frequently. Now inspectors use Survey 123, which auto timestamps and GPS stamps that, but there is an app. I might have to put it in the chat if I can't find it really quickly. Or if Laprel's still on, I don't know if she is. She has used that a lot. So let me try to find it really quickly. And if I can't, I'll have Bram put it in the chat. No, I don't remember oh, okay. There's one called Timestamp Camera. That's literally the name. I don't know if it's a free app or not, but I assume that there is a plethora of free apps on Android or Apple that do time and date stamp your photos, maybe even GPS. But I want to confirm with Laprel because that was her photo with that GPS at the bottom. So I'll have Bram put it in the chat for you, but there's probably 10s of 20s of apps on the App Store for that purpose as well.
Sounds good. And finally, is there a way to determine if all our system components are ADEQ permitted if we cannot find historical paperwork?
Yeah, so I think the first place to start would be looking at CIDWIS or Drinking Water Watch. There are activity dates to the right of each of your components. And if you go to water system details, that'll at least tell you when ADEQ became aware of it and entered it into CIDWIS. If you have an upcoming inspection and you're concerned about possible lack of permitting for older components, please reach out to us beforehand. We're already doing that research and compiling that information to have for you on site. So it's nothing for us to be able to give that to you a little bit early. We obviously have some internal databases that we search for related permits to your system, and to check if each component is permitted or if they've been there for so long that we consider them grandfathered. So definitely start with CIDWIS. You can always ask for your records at our record retention room in the office as well. So there's multiple different avenues, but please lean on the inspectors as a resource in that case as well.
Awesome. Well, that is all of our questions. Natalie, thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Finally, this morning, we have one last presentation for you. I'm going to pass screen controls over to you, Dean, if you are ready for them. Dean's going to walk us through understanding an individual aquifer protection permit, understanding a permit in general.
All right, so it's working?
Yep, I see your screen here. Your presentation is up.
I apologize. The PDF that was attached wasn't the updated one, so there will be a few changes to that PDF.
Gotcha. And I'm going to be sending out presentations as well after the webinar in an email, so I'll make sure the updated one is attached to that there. Awesome. Take it away. Thank you, Dean.
About me, I'm a 4x4 operator. I've helped support the operator certification program for years. Some people might know me from giving out practice exams a long time ago. I still do that in my office now and then for operators, as I'm a big promoter of people obtaining their certifications. Currently the senior treatment engineer in the groundwater reclaim and reuse section at ADEQ, and work on the wastewater treatment individual APP permits, and also assist with collection systems audits. I've been a water infrastructure engineer with ADEQ on the border team, supporting WIFA and the border team back before I left and went to go be treatment designer. And I also worked for a utility that had many growing issues at one point. So got a lot of actual experience instead of just being a typical engineer that doesn't have that real world experience. The individual APPs, these are the rules that govern those APPs, the 49-241, any person who discharges or who owns or operates a facility that discharges needs to obtain an APP from the director, and be the following are considering discharging facilities: surface impoundments, including holding, storage, settling, treatment or disposal pits, ponds and lagoons, sewage treatment facilities, including on-site wastewater treatment facilities, and wetlands designed and constructed to treat municipal and domestic wastewater for underground storage. The Arizona Administrative Code that we use R18-9 is our main rules that we use. So if you're ever looking for something regarding your plants, that's a good place to start. And then R18-11 does our reclaimed water quality standards and AWQS standards. We also reference Arizona Administrative Code R18-5 for the operator certification rules. If you go to the top of your permit, you'll see on the top of the permit, it'll have your permit number, your place ID, and your LTF number. The permit number will stay with the life of the facility, as well as the place ID. The place ID, though, can be linked to more than one permit or more than one environmental program at ADEQ. The LTF number is the number of your most recent permit. When you come in, you get an LTF, and so each permit amendment will have a different LTF number. General permit is also a form of an APP. General permits typically come don't require the monitoring that is required by an individual permit. So ADQ highly encourages facilities that can be on a general permit to get a general permit. And then there are some historic facilities in Arizona that are on the 1.09 general permits, which means they didn't have to come get an individual permit as long as their facility did not expand. And so sometimes we'll have facilities come in that are thinking about putting in, biological treatment, but if they can stay on the general permit, we highly recommend that they do. Here's a copy of the cover for our the first page of our permit. There we'll have the groundwater basin listed, and I got all these sites listed on here so that if you have the opportunity, you can go and play with them, because it's just interesting to know the different basins in Arizona. The owner name and information, the owner must be registered and in good standing with the Arizona Corporation Commission to get a permit amendment. If it's a non-private, we usually do a name search just to ensure that we're getting the name of the facility, name of the owner correct. For instance, we had a permit come across for, it was a town of, but since they had incorporated and it was now the city of. AZ Mapper is a great tool available to all permittees. It'll give you longitudes and latitudes. You can look for townships and ranges on there and see the groundwater basins on there. And then if you put in your county and put in parcel maps, you'll typically find that your county will have the parcel maps where you can find out more information about your facility. We typically use those parcel maps to ensure that the applicant owns the property that they're applying for the permit on. Here's an example of the township range and how we segment it out to get it on the permit. So it'd be the southwest corner of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter. So this is, you'll see this on that first page of the permit. This is just so you can do it yourself if you're filling out an application. Do you know the grade of your wastewater treatment plant? If you have a permit that hasn't been updated in the last 4 to 5 years, then it's not graded on your permit. Currently, we actually put the grade of the facility, because when you look at rules, the rules say a wastewater treatment plant designed to serve so many people, whereas a collection system actually gets bigger as it grows. And a lot of old historic people, including myself at one time, thought the wastewater treatment plant was also based on the number of people we were serving. So it would change as the facility was going, but that is not the case by rule. So we actually put the grade of the system and how often an operator needs to show up to that system in the first paragraph of the permit. So the way we figure that out, we're kind of conservative about it. We use the 80 gallons per capita per day per person right now for, that's in Unit 1 table design flows, which I have a little cut up on top of. And so like a grade 2 system says, a facility that employs biological treatment based on the activated sludge principle or trickling filters and is designed to serve 5,000 people. So the 5,000 times the 80 gives us 400,000. Realistically, if you have a 400,000 gallon per day plant, you can actually serve more, because flows are less from people today than they were back in 2001 when we created these rules. How is your wastewater capacity doing? You should be keeping track of this. Somebody should be keeping track in your organization on how it's doing and how your collection system is growing. You know the current number of connections, the discharge authorizations that's been handed out, but the homes haven't been built and actually connected. And then you have construction authorizations. So somebody's already came in with a set of plans to ADQ and got a permit to go build that collection system. And then the capacity authorization. So that's where you've gone out to like a developer and said, you know what, you can have this chunk of our capacity at the wastewater treatment plant, so that they can start beginning their design. How many persons per household? We usually use census data to figure out how many people per household when we're trying to figure out capacities of the plant and how big the plant needs to be. Retirement community is going to be a little bit less, usually 1.5 to 1.75. And an RV and mobile home park is the same. We'll treat them the same as retirement community. How much does a person discharge? Bulletin 11 used to be 100 gallons per day. Table 1 unit design flows is 80 gallons per day. And today, we'll typically see applicants come in with 60 to 65 gallons per day, and sometimes less. That approval, though, comes from who's ever in charge of the collection system and saying, this is how many people, either per person or per home, that we are going to allow. So census data, you just look for persons per household. And so here's an example, 2.3 for Tucson. Here's an example of how things have changed. So you had 100 gallons per day per person back when Bulletin 11 was put out, and Bulletin 11 is almost the exact same age as myself. I just turned 50, and so it's almost the exact same age. If you look down to the bottom of that table, you'll see that back then organic loadings were 200 milligrams per liter, right? A lot of water, which meant less solids per liter of water. Whereas when we did the rule update in 2001, it went to 80 gallons per day and more like 250 milligrams per liter. Today, you're not going to see less than 335 milligrams per liter of BOD, and it's actually getting closer to 500 is what we're seeing from facilities. Somehow we still have engineers that'll come in and submit the 200 milligrams per liter per day though, for BOD. Typical sewage by definition is defined in R 18-9-101, number 49, and it gives for BOD that does not exceed 380 milligrams per liter. Telling almost everything is high strength sewage now, not typical sewage, just because of low flow fixtures in the communities, especially newer communities. To figure out the peaking factor, we'll usually take the permitted capacity, and you take the annual average day permitted capacity. And so you usually take the annual average day, and your calculations are based on that. The 80 mm is usually not discussed by rule, and usually we use 2 to 3 years. We prefer 3 years of data, but we want a minimum of 2 years of data to show what the difference between the annual average day flow is and the annual daily monthly maximum flow is. So we would use, say you're using 65 gallons per person, then you would divide that permitted capacity by, not the permitted capacity, the annual average day flow capacity by 65 to come up with a population. And then you use the design requirements for peaking factors in R 18-9 E301. On top of that, though, you still need a wet weather peaking factor. And ADQ's rules aren't really good on defining that. We just prefer that everybody just use 1.25 for weather peaking factor for their collection system. The hydraulic capacity will be the annual average daily flow times the dry weather peaking factor times the wet weather peaking factor. And so that's as it gets to the plant, especially a plant with no equalization, that is the capacity the pumps need to be with the largest pump out of service. Or you can have 2 hours of peak flow equalization prior to a pump station. Section 2.1 permit writing. Our permits used to be very nondescript. As we've gotten lean as an agency and everybody's inspecting the same way, our inspectors wanted to see a more robust facility description. So now you have quite a bit of information in there that discusses the facility that wasn't in there in the past. We're trying to get away from such a long description and do a process flow diagram. As long as there's a good process flow diagram, we can minimize what that facility site description is going to be. Annual registration fees are in R 18-14, And you can find there the APP annual registration fees and the ZIPDs registration fees. These fees are based on section 1.1 and what it says your average day monthly maximum permitted capacity is how much it is. Financial capability, if you are a private system, you are required to do some sort of demonstration that if for some reason you went bankrupt and left a wastewater treatment plant, that somebody else can go there and close that wastewater treatment plant down. And so that's required. And typically it's once every 6 years you have to come in and update that financial assurance mechanism. And definitely once every 6 years you have to update the cost estimate. Sometimes there's just an inflation factor that can be added, or sometimes we want a sealed engineered document doing an estimate for the closure costs. Federal agencies, cities, counties, any municipalities or sanitary districts are exempt from having to do the post-closure and closure costs, because we assume that governing board will be there to close anything. Best available demonstrated control technology is section 2.2. So in 2.21, if you're wanting to know who designed your wastewater treatment plant, we'll have it in chronological order, the plans that we received as we've amended permits. Site-specific characteristics. For instance, you can have past unpermitted discharge, history of non-compliance, or if for some reason the depth to groundwater is quite far and soil aquifer treatment can be used. We have a few facilities that have site-specific characteristics for continued treatment after it is discharged from the plant. Pre-operational requirements will be your requirements if you are going to vault and haul, because you have to get enough wastewater, you get enough food for your biology in your wastewater treatment plant. Usually it's around 10% of the flow. You can have vaulting and hauling in there. Vaulting and hauling, the wastewater treatment plant has to be constructed and ready to go before you're allowed to vault and haul. We have a lot of people, just they want to start the community up really quick, and so they build the pump station and they start vaulting and hauling, and that is not the correct way to proceed. Operational requirements, maintain a copy of up-to-date maintenance manual. So if an inspector comes out there, they're going to want to see your maintenance manual. Not only do you want to have maintenance manual available, but you also want it to be semi-organized. Inspecting in accordance with table 16 or whatever table it happens to be in your permit, facility inspection and operational monitoring. That's where you actually have to have like a daily rounds or a weekly rounds and walk around your plant and maintain those records. And then documenting any damage of pollution control structures in the facility logbook. You're going to need your maintenance manual, your facility logbook, and your contingency plan, your permit. These 4 items are going to be asked for every time you have an inspection. So make sure you have those documents at your facility. BADCAT continues with reclaimed water classification. So if you're getting a reclaimed water classification, this is where it'll say what that is permitted for in the permit. If you've been an operator for a long time, then you understand that they used to have individual APP permits and they used to have separated reclaimed water permits. Now they're together. And if you look in table A in R18-11, it'll give you the different uses. If you don't need a class A+ use, it's not necessary to permit for it. Your BADCAT requirements for your discharge monitoring will still be there, but then you don't have to have these turbidity requirements on you if you're not doing an A+. If all you're never gonna use it for anything but B or C direct uses, then you can have a lower class. The Certified Area Water Quality Management Plan, that's a 208. We do require that with an application that you have approval from the authority that manages the 208 plan for the jurisdiction you're in. And so that is required to say, oh yeah, this plant has been approved to do, 2 MGD. Discharge limitations, again, we repeat ourselves a lot in the permit. Here's where we're repeating what your permitted flow is. We have in there that you need to notify all users that material is authorized to be disposed of. This is your industrial pre-treatment control, which is managed by our surface water ZIPDs program. We do greatly recommend that at least once a year you have a mailer that goes out with your bill that talks about things that should not be flushed down the sewer. The permittee shall operate and maintain all permitted facilities to prevent unauthorized discharges resulting from failure or bypassing of bad cat or treatment works. So this is saying you can't bypass a treatment works or a disposal works without letting ADEQ know. And then there's, when you look at the temporary cessation rules, you'll see in there that you have to renew that and let ADEQ know. But that is actually later on in your permit, you'll see temporary cessation. And then specific discharge limitations are listed in section 4.2. So that just tells you you have a routine monitoring discharge monitoring table that you have to follow. Points of compliance. Points of compliance wells are where you have a well to pull groundwater out to make sure that your facility isn't affecting that groundwater. Some facilities have them. A lot of bad cat A+ facilities, we're managing the discharge. And because we're managing the discharge, we're not, where's that at? Because we're managing the discharge, we don't necessarily have a point of compliance well. Although if you start having a lot of discharge monitoring issues, like high nitrogen for extended periods of time, the director can amend the permit and makes you put a conceptual well in. Typically wells that are monitoring for like a ZIPDs discharge or something, we use the R18-9 B204 rules to say a small system is 250,000 gallons. Once you get over 250,000 gallons, then you have to install the monitoring well. And that'll be outlined in your permit right underneath this, right underneath table 2. Here's another one for you to play with. If you like to know about well information around your facility, you can go on AZ Water, and you can look at their maps and you can go around and see the information about the wells in your area. Monitoring requirements is section 2.5. So you have pre-operational monitoring. So that'll talk about what you need to do with your vault and hulling and how you get the facility up and running. Routine discharge monitoring is just letting you know that you have a discharge monitoring table at the back of the permit that you have to follow, and it will say where you are going to take that discharge monitoring sample from. Yeah, of course, if that changes, then you have to come in for amendment to change where you're actually taking the sample from. Reclaim monitoring does the same thing. It'll again let you know what class you have, and it'll tell you where you're going to take that discharge sample from. Typically, if you have a large storage tank at your facility, that discharge will be after the storage tank. Facility operational monitoring. So this is just telling you that you have that facility inspection operational monitoring table at the end of your permit. So you need to follow that, and you need to inspect and document it in a logbook. And then documenting repairs. If there is a violation in there, for instance, you had a spill, like we had somebody report sanitary sewer overflow recently, and they sent me the SSOs, and it was really one of their biological tanks had overflowed. Well, that's not considered wastewater. That's not a sanitary sewer overflow. It is a facility and operational monitoring issue though. So you do have to report it to ADEQ. You're just not reporting it to, as an SSO, you're reporting it to our unit. Point of compliance well replacement. If for some reason you have to replace your point of compliance well, if you're within 50 feet, you don't have to do ambient monitoring. If you're outside of 50 feet, then you have to talk to one of our hydros to see if you have to do ambient monitoring or not. Ambient groundwater quality monitoring for point of compliance wells. So we require 8 rounds of groundwater monitoring So you go out, you come to ADEQ, you give us, tell us how you're going to construct the well. Our hydros approve it. You go out, you build the well, and then you have to take samples, 8 rounds of samples. Then you bring those samples in, and that's how we set your alert levels and AQLs inside your permit. And a lot of people will be doing this with the AWQS rules that came out recently, because more constituents were added to the AWQS in R18-11. Alert levels for point of compliance wells. This is how it'll tell you how you're going to set those alert levels. AQLs for the point of compliance wells. So after you do your ambient monitoring, if an alert level is less than the AWQS, then the AQL ends up being the AWQS. If for some reason the alert level, like what you tested, you already have something in the water that is there and above the AWQS, then your limits get based on that. And if the limit is higher than the AWQS, then you do not get an alert level. You just have an aquifer quality limit inside your permit. Compliance groundwater quality monitoring for point of compliance wells. This will tell you your quarterly compliance groundwater monitoring for the new and replacement point of compliance wells. Monitoring requirements, surface water monitoring and sampling protocols. I've never seen this inside one of our permits. However, we do have typically our surface water and our ZIPDs permits cover that. Analytical methods just tells you where you can find the Arizona State approved facilities to do testing. You must use our Arizona State approved methods. If we don't have one, then EPA approved methods can be used. The detection limits must be sufficient so that what they're testing for is actually lower than the limits that you are inside your permit. And then it tells you, and then here's the link where if you're looking for a certified lab, you can find one. 2.58 is the installation and maintenance of monitoring equipment. So if you have specialized monitoring equipment inside your permit, we will have that. We will have a section in there. Contingency plan requirements. Again, a contingency plan is required when you come in for a permit. We want to make sure, because an inspector can go out to your facility at any time and ask to see your contingency plan. So when you come in for a permit amendment, we ask to see that contingency plan and review it to make sure it's sufficient and contains everything that needs to be in there. It should be maintained at the location where day-to-day decisions are made. I recommend that you also put your permit in the same binder as your contingency plan, so you can find those 2 items real quickly when an inspector comes to your facility. Any AL exceedance or violation of AQL, DL, or other permit conditions shall be reported to ADEQ. How you do that reporting will be inside the contingency plan. Some contingency actions involve you taking a secondary sample, verification sample, and the permittee is responsible for compliance with the contingency plan. The contingency plan itself will be listed, like the one that ADEQ reviewed, will be listed in section 5 of your permit, which is at the after your monitoring tables. The permittee is subject to enforcement action for the failure to comply with any contingency actions in this permit. You're exceeding alert levels and performance levels. You're going to see kind of a trend here is within 24 hours, you need to investigate what's going on. Within 5 days, you need to notify ADEQ, and within 30 days, you have to actually send ADEQ a report, telling them what your findings were, why it happened, how you're going to prevent it from happening again. But exceeding of performance levels and performance levels, the highlighted item that we have here is new. So if you have a release of more than 2,000 gallons of raw effluent from the collection system or a treatment process prior to biological treatment, then you have exceeded an alert level and you need to report that to ADEQ for the individual permitting, not as an SSO. So this is something that actually happens inside the fence at the facility. If it happens in the collection system, it's still considered an SSO and you have to report it to our surface water team. Exceeding alert levels set for discharge monitoring. Within 24 hours, you need to investigate it, and within 30 days, you need to submit a report. Exceeding permit limit flow. If you exceed the alert level, then you should be constructing. You're required to be constructing your next phase inside your permit, or let ADQ know why for approval to not have to move forward. Like maybe you're just completely built out and you just had a high storm event and you're going to go out and fix those issues in your collection system so you don't have those events in the future. If you hit the alert level for the average daily monthly maximum for the final phase, then you are required to come into ADQ for an amendment of your permit and start constructing as soon as possible. A good rule of thumb is once you hit 80% of your alert level, you should be already starting the design and permitting of your plant. Exceeding of alert levels in groundwater. So if you are doing groundwater monitoring in your permit, you'll have alert levels for indicator parameters. I've never seen us fill anything out special for that. Alert levels with pollutants with numerical aquifer water quality standards. Again, those AWQS standards are at the end of R18-11. If you perform, you need to perform verification sampling within 5 days. If you perform it and it meets the AQL, then no further action is required. If it confirms the AL exceedance, or if you opt not to perform that sampling, then you need to report to ADQ. Alert levels for protecting your down gradient users from pollutants. I haven't seen this part of our permit used as well. So typically you'll just see not required at time of issuance. If for some reason there was concern that something discharging from your facility might get into somebody else's groundwater well they use for drinking, then we can have additional monitoring to make sure that doesn't occur. Alert level for groundwater. So some wells, I mean, they start drying out. You know, it's been years. You know, a lot of wastewater treatment plants have been in use for 30 years, and their point of compliance wells are starting to dry out because of the water usage in the area. It is really big in agricultural areas, and we don't monitor that. They're kind of exempt. So they're pulling the water out, and your well starts going dry. You have to come back in ADQ and let us know how you're going to build another well. But those requirements are listed in here. So if monitoring, if you do 6 sequential events and you're still having issues with the groundwater level, then you need to come back into ADQ with a replacement well. Discharge limit violations. So these are usually your discharge limits are based on the R18-9 B204 and the AWQS in R18-11. So if you do have an exceedance, you've got to report it to ADQ within 24 hours, and you still have to send us a report within 30 days. Aquifer quality limit violation, again, an AQL violation is going to be if you are doing groundwater monitoring, then same thing, 24 hours is practical. You're going to evaluate what happened, what was the cause of it, and within 30 days, you send ADQ a report letting us know why you think you're having AQL violations. There were emergency response and contingency requirements for unauthorized discharges. So within 24 hours, as soon as practical, you have to correct any condition resulting from a discharge pursuant to ARS 49201 if that condition can pose an imminent and substantial danger to public health. Discharge of hazardous substances, you have to report within 24 hours as well. If it has a potential to cause an AQL exceedance or could pose an endangerment to public health or the environment. Discharge of you're seeing the trend it's like 24 hours. Pretty much if you have a violation in your permit, best thing to do is report it to ADQ as quickly as possible. And then of course, don't forget to follow up with your 30-day report. And all those reports are now submitted on MyDEQ. Corrective actions, contingency measures identified in your contingency plan do not need to be approved by ADEQ. They were already approved when we reviewed your contingency plan. Now, if for some reason you have an exceedance and before you start doing cleanup or soil cleanup or cleanup of affected surface waters, you have to get that approval from ADEQ. And then again, within 30 days, you have to send us that report letting us know what happened and how you fixed it. Reporting and record keeping requirements. These are reporting and record keeping is really important, and it's one of the items that we find quite often. You'll have an operator that goes out and sees a system and they don't have a logbook at all, or they keep a logbook locked up in a room. The logbook is the communication between the operator and staff that aren't the operator in direct responsible charge. So when the operator in direct responsible charge comes to the facility, takes a look at the facility, any recommendations he has should be in there. We've been to a facility where it looked like you could walk on the sludge because it was so thick. He says, well, I keep telling him to waste. I'm like, show me the logbook. Doesn't have a logbook, then it never happened. You're required in your permit to have a record keeping logbook. You have to have a signed copy of the permit, the logbook. You need to retain any documents for 10 years. So those logbooks are going to stay on your shelf for 10 years. Upon request, both the permit and the logbook will be available for ADEQ. And we will look for the on-site or remote operator direct responsible charge sign-ins in that logbook. Permit violation alert level status. You have 5 days to notify ADEQ after becoming aware of any AL exceedance or violation of any permit condition. And then 30 days, it's like just repeating itself what was inside the smaller sections. Operational, other miscellaneous reporting. This is a reporting if you have for the, again, those inspections, facility inspection, operational monitoring that's in the last table of your permit. You're going to report and keep those in if you have any violations in as far as reclaimed water, you're going to let your reclaimed water agents know that, and any end user who's not waived interest that you have had an issue with your reclaimed water monitoring. Reporting location, this will tell you that the SMRFs are submitted through MyDEQ. We actually, the compliance schedule items now, we actually have a way to submit those to ADEQ. Everything we're getting pretty fancy ADEQ with our electronic reporting. If you ever have a question, you can always reach out to us and ask, hey, where am I supposed to send this? Reporting deadlines, quarterly reporting deadlines, and semi-annual reporting deadlines. So that just has the table that's going to tell you when you're actually going to submit those SMRFs. Changes to facility information. ADEQ shall be notified if anything on page 1 changes within 10 days of a change. And new into our permits is making sure that the certified operator direct responsible charge, if that changes, and you heard him say that earlier, if for some reason you've stopped working at a facility, you have 10 days to notify us, and the owner has 10 days to notify us. The new facility operator needs to also let us know within 10 days that they are now the operator in direct responsible charge. The inspector shouldn't find that out when they arrive at the facility. And then if the emergency telephone number is changed, if somebody else bought the facility, any of those items will require an APP amendment. Temporary cessation, I was talking about it earlier. If for some reason you put treatment works or disposal works out of service for an extended amount of time, you've got to let ADEQ know. Inspectors shouldn't show up and find out that the disc filter has been working for 2 years, or the direct injection wells got clogged and they have been working for 2 years. As soon as those items occur, ADEQ should know about it. Section 2.9 will talk about closure plans, closure completion. Typically, when a facility is ready to close, like they're going to move the facility somewhere else, or an RV park is going to close down or something, you will have the closure of the permit. And this section discusses how you do that with ADEQ. And then if there's any monitoring after closure, that's going to be your post-closure plan and your post-closure completion. For closure and post-closure, you are still submitting SMRFs, SMRFs quarterly. Compliance schedule. The compliance schedule is actually in rule, and so if there's something that we need from a permittee after the permit is issued, you'll find those items in the compliance schedule. For a new facility, the department cannot put a compliance schedule in there for anything that should have been designed and submitted to us in the permit application. So that's a hard one we have with some facilities, because they haven't gotten to the whole sludge. They want to get this facility built as quick as possible. Well, we can't go, well, your sludge treatment facilities, you can send that to us later, and we can't put that in the compliance schedule. Here's an example of a compliance schedule. So if you have a phased permit, the phases in the permit will be in there, and you'll be required to submit an ECOC before discharging. Before discharging, you have to have the engineer seal that everything's been built, and you have to send all those testing results and stuff into ADEQ so that we can approve that. That's just so you can discharge. Then after you've been discharging, we'll ask for you to send your as-built, your testing date. We'll ask for you to send everything to make sure. So the first one just gets you where you're discharging. The second one is, this is the information we actually need. And then if you're vaulting and hauling, you'll have to notify us when you stop vaulting and hauling. If you have wells that can be put in for discharging, they're going to have a section. Your a private system is going to have requirements for the financial assurance mechanism. If for some reason you chose a financial assurance mechanism that only is good for a year or 2 years, then this will have you come in a little bit more often for that, which doesn't require an amendment. But every time you change the closure, post-closure costs, you have to update those every 6 years, required by ARS 49-243. And tables of monitoring requirements. So here's, you get into your bread and butter, the stuff you guys have to know. First, you have table 8, which if you're doing an amendment, typically your system's already discharging, so you won't have an initial startup plan. Initial startup plans are just for new facilities. But table 8 will always be in the permit, though, even if there isn't a table, there's a section for 4.1. And then any parameters that you might have to do for ambient groundwater monitoring for your point of compliance well, you can find under 4.1. Sometimes you'll find under section 4.2. 4.2, if you're familiar, many of you probably have a permit like this where the discharge monitoring and the flow monitoring table were all one table. And then what we'd have is we'd have like a permit with 4 phases, and we'd be repeating the same stuff over and over again. So the person would end up getting like a 60-page, permit. So in order to reduce that, we pulled out the flow monitoring. So we have a flow monitoring table now in our permits for each phase that you're going to have. And then you have the routine discharge monitoring, which is your actual sampling. And each one of both the flow monitoring will have the GPS locations for your flow meters that you're supposed to be reporting from. And the discharge monitoring will have the GPS location of where you are supposed to be sampling from. Same thing with the reclaimed water monitoring. It'll have a GPS location, and your point of compliance well will be on there as well. So those items we require when you get an amendment that you make sure you update those, especially because GPS locations did not used to be as great as they are now. So here's an example of initial startup plan. Again, remember that if you have if you are going to be vaulting and hauling, the wastewater treatment plant has to be built before you can start vaulting and hauling. That way you are ready to move over and something isn't occurring where your growth has happened too quickly and you're not able to use your plant yet. Routine flow monitoring. So here's an example of the where your sampling point will be, your sampling point identification, and then the location of it. And then you'll have total flow on here. In every permit, we'll have total flow. And then if you're doing reclaimed water, You'll have reuse flow. If you have a ZIPDs permit, you'll have ZIPDs flow. So in order to measure, there has to be some way to measure those flows. If for some reason, say you have no meter for your ZIPDs flow, then we do require you to submit a standard operating procedure on how you're going to calculate those ZIPDs flows. Like, yeah, we change this valve, we take a number off the meter and we subtract it from something else. I don't know, whatever you guys do to track those flows, we want to know how if you don't have an actual flow meter in place. The alert level for flow is 90% of the discharge level. It used to be 95%, but we had a lot of facilities getting into trouble and going over their discharge limits because they couldn't, 5% wasn't allowing them enough time to expand their facility. You don't have to report service water when you're reporting your flows. We consider that part of the plant and the treatment system. And then again, I said earlier, once you get to 80% flow, you should be designing. Remember to read the footnotes. A good example is R18-9B204 requires you to perform 4 out of 7 samples for E. coli or fecal, and it says in a week, so it's a weekly calculation. Whereas when you go to the reclaimed water tables, it is a daily calculation, which means the difference is one, you're reporting 365 times, the other one you're reporting 52 times. But that's in rule. We're actually working, hoping that they change it in the next rule update so that they both match each other. You're going to choose either E. coli or fecal coliform, so you have to choose whatever's inside your permit, and then you have to choose MPN or CFU. For CFU, a value greater of 1 is non-detect. For MPN, a value greater than 2.2 is considered non-detect. Again, the daily samples 4 of 7 in a week, and that's in a calendar week, so Sunday through Saturday, unlike the reclaimed water monitoring. And then you're going to do your 5-sample nitrogen rolling geometrical mean. This is what it looks like in your permit, which looks like an equation. Some people afraid of math don't like that, but in Excel, you can easily just put this formula in to calculate your nitrogen, 5-sample nitrogen. Reclaimed water monitoring requires fecal coliform. It will not allow you to do E. coli. And so if you have chosen E. coli in your discharge monitoring, and then you're choosing fecal coliform inside your reclaimed watering table, then you're going to be doing 2 different sample variations, especially if you have the same sampling point for both discharges, then you kind of want to have fecal coliform in both of them. Enteric virus is required if you don't have, for instance, polymer facilities or anything else. Our rule says if alternative treatment process or if alternative turbidity criteria used or reclaimed water is blended with other water to produce the Class A+ water, then you must do the enteric virus sampling. You are only required to do, you have to have 4 out of 7 non-detect samples for enteric virus. If for some reason your turbidity creeps up and you have a turbidity discharge limit violation, then you're required to go back and do the enteric virus sampling again. And you're just going to keep sampling until you have 4 of the last 7 samples as non-detect. Then you can stop sampling again. And these are, again, outlined, they should be outlined in your footnotes. Sometimes a footnote disappears or something, we're writing a permit, it happens. So if you have questions or, hey, this isn't telling me how to do it in our permit, just give us a call. We'll be happy to answer your question. So your turbidity sampler must be on at all times. Remember that turbidity is not measured at the same point, is not going to be measured at the same point that you're taking your fecal coliform and nitrogen samples. Typically, you want to do turbidity as soon as you've gotten through filtration. So if you have disc filters or SAM filters, you want to have the turbidity being taken directly after that. If you do have a high turbidity event, then you should have a polymer or coagulant that before the filters that actually will help them filter out the turbid, the TSS. Groundwater monitoring. If you have a groundwater monitoring, we used to have total coliform in there, and you had to do total coliform as part of a sampling. And we actually went and tried to, make something simpler for the permit and had rules and stuff that we had to look at if somebody else was trying to get away from total coliform. But we just recently, when we updated the AWQS standards, they also updated the rule. So now you don't have to do total coliform, and we've matched the rule to B204, which is going to be your fecal coliform or E. coli sampling, which a lot of people have, like IDEX or something at their the CoAlert or some other way to do it at their own facility. So they had to take the total coliform into town. So this is one of those things where I appreciate the fact that ADQ listened to the customer and actually made the two the same. Now we just need to do that with our reclaimed water rules. I'm always in favor of doing something that makes it simpler for the operator to operate their plant. I was an operator at one time, and I've been in those shoes before, and it's nice when things are just a little simpler for us. This is the ambient groundwater monitoring table. So if you are installing a point of compliance well and you have to take those 8 samples, this is what you would be sampling for, and this would be a table in your permit. And this is R18 11406. I've referenced it several times today in the presentation, but these are the rules. One thing I found when I'm reviewing permits is that somehow the permit writer put organic nitrogen in there. So your TKN and your total nitrogen, and they have limits for those in groundwater monitoring. Just so you know, there is no organic nitrogen in the AWQS rules. So if you look at your permit, you go, man, I keep having to sample for TKN and report this total nitrogen. You can come back to us and ask that it be removed, because it is not in the numeric AWQS standards. Now there recently, I think it was August 4th, we adopted more constituents that are now in this table. And so everybody is being required to come in and perform their monitoring, come in for a permit, or talk to the permitting team. If they don't need to come in for an amendment, every facility is required to do this. So if you didn't know about this and you're an operator in direct responsible charge, take a look at it. It's in the requirements for it is actually in R18-9. This is what if you look at where it says table Roman numeral 2, that's pretty much what our facility and operational monitoring tables looked like until about 5 years ago. It really didn't put anything on the facility to check certain things. We get odor control complaints. Well, we've never tested our odor control. We go there and there's a tree growing out the side of a tank. It's like there's nothing in there. So we have quite a list that we look at now when we're writing a permit, so that when we're trying to, every facility is different, so every list is going to be different and it'll apply to your system. You are required to do this monitoring, record it, and have it. And you can just do it and put in your record keeping book, or you can have your own round sheet to do it, but you want to make sure you're looking at these things, because the inspector will look to see that you've been doing that monitoring and recording it. Section 5 is after the monitoring tables. You'll have section 5, which just tells it's just application information that we reviewed your contingency plan, and this was the date on your contingency plan. Now, like I said, we're trying to do process flow diagram and have a reference to a process flow diagram, so the inspector has something to take out with them. And then we also trying to reference if there's an equipment list, we'll have an equipment list as well. Usually we don't put vendor names on the equipment list. We just have, horsepowers and flows for pumps or blowers. And then 6 and 7 is just boilerplate. I call it lawyer talk, but it's in every single permit, and section 6 and 6, section 7 doesn't change for the permits. 7 had less items. That's the reason why I put underneath 5. But here's the 6. So it just says you're going to do the things that you're required to do in your permit. If not, these are the places where you can look for for issues. This 6.6, this is what gives us the right to actually go on your facility and do an inspection. And then transferring, suspending, or revoking permits is down on the bottom. That's it. There any questions?
Awesome.
I know that
Thank
was a
you,
lot
Dean.
of information, especially from a very monotone voice because I'm such a large mammal.
Now, there are some questions in here. First is a comment, I believe. It says those of us that have an AZPDES permit are used to having the sample type, grab versus comp, spelled out in the permit, whereas APPs do not have direction. But I've learned over decades of being in wastewater that they are assumed to be all grabs because of drinking water rules. The comment is that it would be helpful for AZDEQ to spell this out in APP permits for those that don't know.
Well, I'll bring that comment definitely to the team. I think I have heard it before, but typically your only grab samples are going to be your pathogen testing samples. Everything else should be a composite sample.
Perfect. One question here: when should you include the governor's office for an unplanned discharge or spill?
Typically, I mean, communication travels up and down in our agency. We're really good about it. We have meetings that every 15 minutes that go up to the director. And if it's worth sharing, the director would typically let the governor know. Let's say you don't want to make a news headline. If you make a news headline, the governor, I'm sure, is going to find out about it. But realistically, that is past my pay grade. I'm an engineer, not a manager. So it'd be a good question for the managers.
Definitely. Two more questions here, it looks like. The first is, if the plant flow for reuse or discharge has 4 non-detect samples for E. coli or fecal coliform, are the other 3 days of sampling required?
Just says 4 out of 7. But the other thing is that's if you have, for E. coli sampling, you also have a daily maximum as well. So since you have the daily maximum, you do have to take that sampling. With the grade 2 systems, I try to get that to a weekly sampling since an operator is only going out there weekly. So the facility doesn't have to have, maintenance personnel run to the lab every single day. And in that case, typically your 4 of 7 sample will be your daily maximum for that week. So hope to update that rule as well so it matches what we try to do in permits, and we do that for our customers. So we don't want mom and pop facilities to have to pay for somebody to run a sample in when it's a very small system.
That makes sense, yeah. And final question in here, unless there's any follow-ups, is there anything we could do if there's a suspected contamination in a monitoring well?
Sample and report it to ADQ and try to figure out why it's in there. Typically, if it's your point of complaints, well, we'll have you get a hydrologist to figure out what's going on and why all of a sudden you're starting to have issues. Again, when you first drill that well, before the plant starts discharging, we set those limits inside your permit based on what's already inside the well. But sometimes when if you're putting a discharge out there, that discharge, there could be stuff already in the soil, like for instance, your wastewater treatment plant is on an old ag farm and then you used a lot of nitrogen, so you would get a hydrologist come back into us for a permit amendment to adjust those limits. And how to do that is actually in your permit if you go through your permit. Any other questions? One thing I'd also like to say is, as operators, and myself being a grade 4x4 operator, sometimes like when there's no record keeping book or there's other issues like, a disc filter has been out for 2 years and they've had the same operator and direct responsible charge. Yes, the facility should get an NOV or NOC, but we're trying to push now that the operators are also going to start getting those violations as well. So be a diligent operator, do the right thing, report. And if you're questioning the reporting, give us a call, report or give us a call, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you.
It does look like that is all the questions. And again, thank you so much, Dean, for the presentation and all the follow-ups there. If you do have any other questions for Dean or any of our other presenters today as you go about your day, if something comes up, do make sure you download that agenda from the Materials tab. Whether or not you're an operator, that agenda does have emails for all of our presenters today. And that agenda will be what you must upload to your OpCert profile in order to get those PDHs.
Graham,
That
one more
is
thing
all-
I was going to mention.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize to
No, you're
to
good.
interrupt you, but on the general permit side, ADQ has the 4.23 permit, which is for facilities between 3,000 and 24,000. So if you actually meet those conditions, you want to be on a general permit. But just more recently, we have the general permits that go up to 75,000, and that's in statute 49-243. And so we have that, and we also have effluent collection system rules that are coming out now, where there's septic tanks that discharge into instead of going to a leach field, they actually go to a collection system where the plant can just treat that. So we have rules coming out. So if you're not on the list, get on the list so you get the information in your email from ADQ. Cool.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for that. I do have here, last before you head on out, a QR code. This is a how did we do little survey. I'll email it in a follow-up right here as well. But make sure, again, you grab that agenda for your PDHs. If you have any follow-up questions, you can contact the presenters from the context on that agenda or contact me at the OpCert program, azopcert@azdeq.gov. Thank you all for being here today. I hope you got something out of this webinar. It will be recorded and up on our YouTube channel if you want to revisit any of these presentations in the future. But apart from that, those of you who are looking for PDHs, you are good for those 4 PDHs today. And everyone who is here, thank you so much for attending. Hope to see you in Flagstaff next month at our emergency preparedness webinar.